Morning, Stephen.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Bezil.
How come I don't see people? What's going on?
We have our cameras turned off.
Oh, okay. Well, you can watch Frozen behind me then.
Thank you.
This one? Are you sure? No. Do you want this one? It's coming, sweet girl.
We're waiting for one more committee member. There's 4 committee members. So committee members, if you could, to be counted in the quorum, you need to have your video showing, and please make sure your name is correct. I see all your names are correct. So thanks. Morning, Kim.
Good morning, Miss Bambi Palazzola and Dr. Hyacinth McKee. Ladies, if we could have you join us by sharing your video, please, so that we can count you for our quorum.
So Dr. McKee, once Bambi's video comes up, you have a quorum.
Hi, guys.
Can you guys hear me now and see me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes,
Oh,
ma'am.
thanks for shaking your head because we have really bad weather and I don't know what's so thank y'all for that. I think we have a quorum. Sean, isn't that correct?
Yes, ma'am, you have a quorum.
Okay, great. And so we will start the meeting. Greetings and good morning to everyone that's present. Our chairperson, Randall, is unable to make it today, but he would like for us to go on ahead and proceed with reviewing the fiscal year plan. With that being said, I was not in attendance yesterday because I got my schedule mixed up. And so pardon me if I'm trying to catch up myself to find out exactly what we decided yesterday. I did get an opportunity to review some of the information and I saw some of the notations that were made, but I don't know exactly where we left off yesterday. And so whoever was in attendance yesterday, if they would like to just kind of say where we left off yesterday so we can move forward. And again, I apologize for that. I was not present yesterday as I had a scheduled conflict. So I'm not sure who was in attendance yesterday. That can probably just start where we left off.
So hi,
Yes.
I was in attendance and Stephen and Chris were in attendance of those of us that are on right now. And so I think we made it through that first day agenda. And so I don't think there's anything left. Now how thoroughly we covered, if we need to go back and cover something, maybe we need to do that. But we did go through all of the items as I recall. And so I think we're ready to move on to this day's agenda.
Okay, so I am getting today's agenda right now pulled up. Leave that Sean is sending for me.
There are 2 things. Y'all did leave, y'all did not indicate specific amounts for some of the contractual activities. And we found out that there was a set of concept proposals on person-centered thinking training that had been sent to, they thought they sent it to Courtney, but they had her email wrong. And so there's a whole nother little set of things for y'all to consider as well. But I sent y'all last night, you know, the list with the budgeted amounts, and in yellow were things that y'all had discussed, but not really nailed down how much y'all thought should be committed towards it. And so I thought y'all were going to cover that quickly this morning and come to a decision on that part of that from yesterday.
So I need the agenda for today. It's not in my email.
Yeah, I just sent it to you. Let me, I'll send it again.
I have information from Hannah for joining, but I don't have the email for the agenda. Y'all just give us a second on that, and we'll get right on it. Thanks for your patience. Here it is. Okay, I'll wait for Sean to get back on, but it looks like I just received the agenda. Today we're going to be recapping what was discussed at the previous meeting. If anyone wants to do that briefly, I will ask that someone yesterday do that. If not, we will move right on into the review of the non-contractual activities and goals 1 through 5. So Bambi, if you could kind of do that real briefly for the viewers that probably did not attend yesterday, because I think we're on YouTube Live. Will you be comfortable with just kind of maybe 3 little highlights that that was decided yesterday, and we will move straight into the non-contractual activities?
Sure. Let me pull that up.
And that's okay. I mean, it's not anything really formal. It's just a recap.
Okay.
Would you like me to share that document?
Yeah, if you would, that would be
Please
helpful.
do. Thank you.
But I think I'm looking at the budget document.
Yeah.
And so we talked about our ongoing contractual obligations with partners in policymaking in LACAN. We also have some ongoing some activities that we recommending to continue into the next fiscal year that's current. So like People First training, the Post-Secondary Inclusive Education Alliance, childcare, training for childcare teachers, and customized employment. And then some other items that were brought up, which, well, actually, we also have a relationship and sexual abuse training. So that would be something we're recommending to have continue into the next fiscal year. Some new items were supported decision-making training, pilot addressing police tactics and approaches, let's see, training on emergency preparedness and coordination around emergency preparedness and natural disaster, and emergency resources in natural disasters, or any type of emergency type situation. So those are the items that we discussed yesterday, as I recall.
Yeah,
And I see that the school resource officer law enforcement training as well, Bambi, huh? I'm noticing that as well. Is that something that you all discussed yesterday as well?
The law,
The school resource
office.
Yes. The law enforcement training?
Yeah, that wasn't, but it wasn't, I think the discussion was that not necessarily school resource officer, but
Okay,
to look at, instead of it just being a training, like really
Yeah.
there's like a cultural shift that has to be made. So talking about doing like a
Yes.
pilot, like maybe in one parish or in one area where
absolutely.
there's a technical assistance and ongoing kind of a
Yeah.
cultural shift instead of just a training.
Yes, yeah, it sounds great. We've had some conversations about that, I think previously, you know, trying to do some law enforcement training for police officers. So I see that's on there too as well. Okay, thanks. Did we, and please let me know if I'm out of pocket with this, but did we also discuss, or were committee members or even information from the public, did anybody make any additional recommendations based on possible needs? Did any committee members come up with any other ideas? Because I know sometimes we do that as well. And we're sometimes flexible with kind of discussing ideas. Was that allowed yesterday? And is that something that can be allowed now?
I don't know if there was any ideas mentioned from the floor.
Okay.
Ms. Maziel has her hand raised.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so y'all can hear me now. Okay.
Yes.
I see that we have the 90,000 for the child care early steps inclusion training, and that's for the HDC, is that correct? Well, if we go back to the Cheryl Matney training, where Jamie Wong asked a question about the perception of the conflict of interest of giving money to some of our partners that sit on the council, there could be a perception of a conflict of interest. So where do we stand with that? It's on page, I think 44 or 48 of the transcript from that quarterly meeting.
HDC, this is Sean. So HDC is actually written into the DD Act, and we're actually required to collaborate and coordinate different things with them. And, Phil is the representative of HDC, LSU HDC now.
I understand that, Sean. I understand all of that. But if we're going to go by what Cheryl Matney has told us, and we cannot use what she has told us piecemeal and just pick the parts that we want. So we need to decide now if there's a conflict of interest or a perception of that, because obviously there was a perception of a conflict of interest with partners, with having 2 council members on the partners. That's what started that entire conversation with Jamie Wong. So I don't know if y'all want to go back and review that transcript, but I don't see how we can just go against what she said to us now, but then take what she told us law on other items.
This is Chris. And I'd have to look at the transcript, but I remember asking kind of a very similar question, but from the P&A perspective. So the P&A and the Human Development Center and the DD Council are the same, like 3 entities that are within the DD Act. And again, I have to look, it's been a while, but I seem to recall when I asked specifically about Louisiana or the P&A, and she said, oh, this does not apply to you. And if it doesn't apply to us, presumably it's the same thing with the University Centers of Excellence or however they're.
I'm not sure that is exactly what she said.
Even if that is the case, I would say that whoever would be receiving money if there was a vote should abstain from that vote. Like I would not feel comfortable, even if we decided that we can have contracts with partners on the council weighing in, voting yay or nay on a contract that I would or not that I personally, but that my agency would benefit from. I don't know.
So, I mean, what I could do if y'all like, I could seek guidance and get a statement clarifying it. I mean, I understand the difference. There's a number of reasons why I don't have concerns of conflict of interest over that. I mean, we have a contract with LSU right now. to do this.
I understand, but we also had a contract where we could have 2 council members in PIP, and we had that for 20+ years. I'm just saying that I think we need it reviewed. And Sean, if you're going to write a letter, I'd like to see the letter by, say, the end of this week that you're sending off so that we know that it gets sent on a timely basis. And I'm trying to find the transcript right now.
This is Bambi. Can I speak? So I'm getting confused in regards to what's the issue with partners? People on the council can't go to partners. I must have missed that.
Nope. According to Cheryl Matney, it is a perception of a conflict of interest, and that starting, I guess, with the 2020 class, we can no longer have anyone in partners that sits on the council. So,
Okay.
Well, you
Yeah.
mean, we can't have council members participate in partners and policy-making activities, correct? And that's what you're saying, Kim?
they cannot be in the
Right.
partners class while they
Cannot
sit
be in
on
that
council.
class. I remember that. I remember when Cheryl
And
had
that being brought up, had Jamie Wong asked the question, well, if that is, here it is on page 43, if that is a perception of a conflict of interest, how come the others aren't? And I'm trying to read it right now, but I can't read that quickly. It starts on like page 43 of the, I got the email June 14th. So whatever quarter that was, the May 23rd DD Council meeting.
Well, I think, Kim, you bring up a valid point, and I think it's important just to seek guidance to see if we are doing everything in accordance to policy and ethics. And I mean, LSU is a huge system. And so, Kim, are you asking specifically for HDC, or are you saying not LSU at all? Because LSU is global. I mean, it's, you know. So
I'm saying the partners that sit on the council with us is what Jamie Wong raised to Cheryl. And I'm not sure that we ever got a definitive answer, because no, I don't think anyone ever did go back and follow up with Cheryl.
Okay. So we're asking to seek guidance if, I mean, position it, Kim, the way you would like for us to do the research on it. Position it, make your statement the way you want us to take a look at it.
I'm going to have to go back to the transcript first.
Okay, so
give me a minute.
Okay.
Move on.
Yeah, and so if it's okay, we will definitely revisit your comment and concern, but we would like to just keep proceeding with the meeting if we can do that. And so let's just do that. And Kim, we will come back to that issue that you brought up, okay, once you're able to gather your information. Okay, and so thanks, Bambi, for the recap of the previous meeting. Now, can we go right into the review of the non-contractual activities goals 1 through 5? All right, and so I have them pulled up, and okay, I am looking at my, okay, so let me say this, Sean, I have stuff starting with page 4, then it jumps to page, all right, activity goal 1, individuals with developmental disabilities and their family members will have information, training, support, and leadership to effectively advocate and impact systems change by educating policymakers. I'm on page 1 of 9 of the action plan. Objective 1 looks like we have a approximately cost for 20K. There doesn't seem like we need any changes there. Moving on to activity 1.1.2. There are some recommendations there. Individuals with developmental disabilities and their family members will have access to opportunities and support to build skills to be effective leaders and systems change advocacy. Currently, the cost is approximately $90,000, but there are some recommendations we need to consider. The first one is to consider offering online opportunities until COVID-19 is no longer at risk. Opportunities could be presented as individual sessions or pseudo PIP sessions. You know, let's have some discussion about that. Do we want to involve alumni, and should we move with the fiscal 20 PIP class? So we need to have a discussion about that. Does anybody have any comments or any questions about that recommendation?
Tammy has her hand raised.
I can't see it because the way my screen is.
I'll just wave.
Thanks, Bambi. I can't see you. I'm a mess right now. I'm just looking at the agenda.
So I may have, my mind might have wandered for a moment. So we went through this yesterday.
Okay.
So but we did not decide on how it would be done because we realized that I don't even know if we can make a decision because we really don't know how, this pandemic is going to affect things, yet. So I guess I just want some clarity on that. Because I think it was decided yesterday the $90,000 would be put in the budget, but the delivery of
the
it.
specifics have not been quite outlined because we don't know about the pandemic.
Yeah. Those bullet points were some of the recommendations on what the potential, things we could consider, but it's hard to make a decision right now.
Okay.
And I don't think y'all need to make that level of decision as long as y'all give us general guidance of what y'all expectations are. We will need to know, like, if y'all expect us to have a class, now's the time to start receiving applications and start that process. And so we will need to know, like by July's meeting, if y'all expect that to start now, because if y'all don't say anything and y'all tell me to do this, I will start that process. That's my interpretation of it as it stands.
Is anybody in the committee opposed to the recommendation of offering online opportunities as it stands right now because what we're experiencing from the pandemic? Is anybody opposed to online opportunities being offered?
I'd say so long as they are accessible.
That's a good question. That's a good point.
I'm not opposed to it. It's just going to be a whole different experience because a lot of what Partners is getting the in-person, getting to meet your classmates in person and hanging out with them and learning with them. And it's going to be a whole different experience, I believe.
Yeah, I concur with Stephen.
Yeah, it's a lot to be said for physical connections with people, huh? Because in class, you become a cohort and there's a connectedness there and a sense of pride and alum, so that is something to, we could decide to,
Ms.
Sean
Case
is
has
asking,
her hand raised.
I can't see, say it again.
Ms. Case has her hand raised.
Oh, thanks, Brenda. Hi, greetings.
This is Kim.
Kim, greetings. Okay, what's your comment?
I agree with Stephen. I agree with Stephen, but I want to go further and say, I want to take all avenues possible to have it in person and have it online as being the absolute last resort.
Okay, point noted. And it sounds like everyone is pretty much aligned with that intention, but then again, we don't know, if that can be honored. But Sean is asking for some direction, and I understand because there are some pressing deadlines that he needs to address because we are going into the new fiscal year, and so we need to be able to offer him some direction on should he start, sending out information. I mean, what direction should we give him? You can't just table, we have the funding there for PIP. We have to give the executive director some type of direction. And I think that's what he's asking us to do. Any ideas, folks?
This is Bambi. I don't know, Brenda, did you have your hand raised? Did you want to speak? I'll wait for Brenda if she was, but I don't know if she's frozen. It looks like it might be frozen.
The
right now.
weather is really bad, Bambi. That's why I can't see
So-
y'all.
So I'll go ahead. I think that I agree with Kim and with Stephen. I just feel like partners, I think virtual meetings are great and we're kind of moving into those things in a lot of ways, but the in-person really means a lot to partners. But I would like to consider, I mean, we have a partners class of 20 who has not been able to finish their class. So I would like to keep the option on the table. I like to recommend keep the option on the table that should in-person meetings be safe, that they would be able to be that class to go through in 21. And potentially if there's money left on the table, maybe we could do some type of trainings like that was done a couple of years ago when we didn't have a class, but it could be done virtually. That's kind of a capacity building leadership and advocacy, and that could be done virtually, I think. So those are just the two options that I would throw out for people's consideration.
So Bambi, I'm recommending maybe like a hybrid of some type. Does that sound
Yeah,
like what you're trying to say? More like a hybrid opportunity?
If we get to the point where in-person trainings are possibility, we don't know if we'll get to that point, but if we can, then yes, definitely have the class if it can be done in person. But also have some, if there's funding available, have maybe some online type leadership training similar to what we did a few years ago, which they weren't online, they were done in person, but it was just a little bit different than the partners classes.
Ms.
So maybe,
has her hand raised. Would you like to hear her comment?
yes.
I will need to promote her to a panelist. So.
Hi, good morning. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Good. Okay, good. Thank you. Hi, guys. I just wanted to give my input. I know I'm no longer the coordinator, but having done it for so many years, I just wanted to give a little bit of input on there. What Sean was saying is that it is necessary if you're going to start recruiting as soon as possible, because the deadline has always been September 30th. In previous years, they would extend the deadline, to October 15th, October 30th, if needed, based on the fact that they didn't have applications. That any later than that does get challenging because you have to get in touch with all these people. You have to make sure they're still interested. Then you have to send out information because there's still follow-ups even. So between like October and December, although you're not in class, there's a lot of work to be done with the coordinator, connecting with the people to make sure that everybody's still online, everything's good before January. You also have to keep in mind that this is the time when you need to looking into the hotel reservations and making sure you got booking because they book so far out, making sure the dates are set for the following year. But with that being said, following up with what Bambi said on, she would like to see this class move forward, then that question would be, is that class moving forward, meaning they would next year's class again, and you would start and only do the 3 months they miss, meaning the April, May, and June. If that's the case, then yes, there would be money left over for what Bambi was recalling. I highly recommend that if you're going to decide to do it a whole new class and let those people come back as being part of the ones who return, then you need to literally start them from January 2, because you'll be creating an entire new class in January. And even if there are 13 that return from this year, plus an additional 10, you don't need to do them 3 months. You need to give them a full effect with their new class for the bonding. So those were just some recommendations when you're thinking it out. If you're thinking about only doing this class moving forward, they did get 3 months, January, February, March, and you could do some online with them. But I would recommend if you're going to do any of that, try to do it this year, but then there's probably not funding because the funding ends June 30th, and there's very little between July and September for any kind of unless it's strictly online, then you might be able to pull it, but they will not get the full impact like everybody else. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Liz, for those recommendations. It sounds like we do need to give Sean some guidance on this. I propose that since the fiscal year 20 PIP class has the January, February, and March physical connection, that some bonding has already occurred, I propose that we offer the online opportunities to that 20 PIP class to finish out. Because I think that for them to just kind of be held in limbo is also unfortunate as well, because we have now transitioned to online and a lot of telecommunication. So I propose to at least allow that class of 20 to finish out and offer that online opportunity to them. As far as the 21 class, I'm proposing that Sean he does start the process of recruiting and possibly indicate a statement or something in the recruitment process that, as it stands right now, the delivery of the class is still up for discussion, and then maybe outline some opportunities or potential ways that the class will be delivered online, fully 100% online, which of course we don't want that. I mean, we want them to be able to bond, but then also it may be offered as a hybrid, whereas some of the courses will be, some of the interactions would be online, and then other of the interactions will be in person, but all of this is contingent upon the pandemic. So we do not want to give people this false sense that all of the opportunities will be provided in person. But I do not want to delay that the 20 PIP class, and I don't want to delay the process, like Liz is saying, trying to get everything together for 21. So I hope I didn't say that real quickly, but that's what I'm proposing. Any other committee members have any recommendations for this so we can decide, give Sean guidance, and move to the next activity?
Miss Brenda Casse has her hand raised again.
Greetings, Brenda.
Good morning. I do concur with the hybrid, and I'm not sure if anyone mentioned the health concerns of some of the current members. So for currently, I would say to offer online as an option so that they can finish their course if they're available. And for those who may not be available, I think that they should be given the option to restart next year. But definitely hybrid. We want to remember the health of some people, that they still are not able to be in the public even with a mask on. Some people have not received their release to the public, so to speak, from their doctors. And we also want to consider that I'm not sure to what extent all of our current partners, members, as well as future ones, maybe just next year, have received any type of what specific funding they're receiving to participate. But we want to remember the economy that we're in. If there's any out-of-pocket expenses for the partners who are selected, that may be a problem. It may also hinder some of them from even applying if they think that they need to just come and not have the option to do it virtual. Thank you.
Thanks, Brenda, for your comments. Committees, any other comments on this activity item so that we can move further? Sean, did you receive clarity and the directive?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you all so much.
Okay, awesome. All right, activity 1.2.4, facilitate and support advocacy events, including but not limited to legislative roundtables, a conference and advocacy training sessions. Approximate cost $40K. There's some recommendations here. Offer a series of online activities and effective advocacy for LACAN members. Training in effective advocacy. Systems 101, and virtual meetings and informational seminars with policymakers. Any comments to this section, this activity? Any changes needed? Any recommendations?
Y'all did not decide on that $40,000 or to even have this activity for this year. I just want to make that clear. Because if y'all don't have any money to it, there would not be any activities. So in the discussion yesterday, this was not decided. This was from last year. The things in yellow are what was done last year. And so I just left them in there as a placeholder for y'all.
Well, certainly, folks, we want to consider continue to support LACAN and provide financial support to the activities that they engage in, particularly these activities that include advocacy. And so if there are not any objections to this, or if there are objections, please speak now so that we can make a decision.
Ms. Bambi Palazzola has her hand raised.
Well, I had it raised before you spoke, Hyacinth, but
Okay, I can't
agree
see
with
y'all. So
Oh,
sorry.
no, that's okay. No, that's fine. I'm just saying I agree with you. So
Okay,
I concur.
all right.
Yeah, I don't think y'all need $40,000 in here. This
Okay.
covered the conference and a bunch of other activities that, so I would recommend y'all lower that amount substantially.
Mr. Stephen Wynn has his hand raised. Ms. Kim Bazile has her hand raised.
Hi, Stephen, and then Kim.
Hello, hello. Can we consider maybe doing something for our transition age youth and young adults with developmental disabilities and offer some type of training or something like that so that we can make sure that we're not missing out on them and their potential that they can be advocates too.
Great, Stephen. Are you recommending that that would go on the LACAN, or are you just putting that as a recommendation for us to consider?
I mean,
other
I don't know if
action
it
items?
fits under LACAN, but
Okay. Okay.
I think we can do more to target our young adult and youth population.
All right, we'll hold on to that. Kim?
Okay, I'm not quite sure why we need to have activity 1.2.3 and 1.2.4 separate. And do we actually need a pot of money of 215 plus 40 for those two line items? It just seems like a bit much. And who's going to do these trainings? I think maybe some of this money could be better spent elsewhere.
Thanks, Kim. I think that's what Sean is saying, but not saying. He is questioning the amount, the 40,000, and he did propose a reduction in that. So maybe it sounds like you all are saying similar things, but your concern, Kim, are you proposing that the activities should be merged? Or one should be eliminated? I mean, what? Bring some clarity to that so we can.
I don't see why we can't merge them and consolidate the pot of money down a little bit and maybe move some of that, the extra money around where it can be better used. I mean, maybe I'm reading them incorrectly, but to me, they sound like they're kind of sort of the same thing.
So this is Bambi. If I can just add a little bit to that. The reason why there's two activities, as I recall historically, is that activity 1.2.3 is LACAN, and there's some rules within, is it state or federal, as the dollar amount. I think it has to be less than $250,000 that we can have contractually. And so LACAN, if it's fully staffed and fully, operational, it gets to that limit, that ceiling limit. And so this other activity is actually kind of a separate body of work. And so I think that it was actually like a funding issue, like the dollar amount. Now this year, we're not going to have that issue because the cost of travel and that type of thing isn't included.
That's not, I mean, we've had this events, y'all have had this activity when we had LeCann and LaTeach. And it was because sometimes y'all would do conferences and hold other advocacy training events that are outside of the scope. LeCann is y'all grassroots advocacy network, and it addresses what the council's advocacy agenda is, and it gives y'all information for that, and then it helps educate its members specific to those things. And so there are some activities that cross over that it's just easier, like roundtables are the only one really. It's just that we have in here that are kind of LeCann events, but they're not that much money. It's only like $6,000 tops for all those roundtables. So that's not really it. It's when y'all do separate events that are not LeCann specific, it's to have a space where those things can occur. And and so you have to think every other year y'all run a conference, that's where that gets dropped. And sometimes we do other advocacy training events outside of LeCann. So, but I would recommend y'all lower the amount.
So that 1.2.4, what I'm hearing from Bambi and Sean is that it's specific to LeCann, and that's why it's itemized in that manner. I am hearing, correct?
1.2.3 is specific to LeCann. 1.2.4 is not specific to LeCann.
Okay. And that's why Kim, and now I see why Kim is having her. It is a little confusing. I see why she has why her question is raised. Are we proposing to reduce the 40,000? What's your recommendation on that, Sean? Can we entertain Sean's recommendation on that? What's your recommendation for that?
I would do, say, 15,000.
Mr. Stephen Wynn has his hand raised.
Stephen, thanks.
So I guess my question would be, would my recommendation be more appropriate for 1.2.3 as opposed to 1.2.4?
That's it, yeah. Maybe so, Stephen, and your recommendation may also fit when we get to when we start discussing education too as well, right? So in that area, so that may fit there. Okay, committee, we need to make a recommendation, a decision on, are we going to reduce the costs to what the executive director is proposing? Are there any objections to reducing the cost from 40,000 to 15,000 for 1.2.4? Okay, I don't hear any objections, and so we will move to recommend that reduction in cost from 40,000 to 15,000 for 1.2.4. Moving right along to activity 1.2.5. Collaborate with Families Helping Families LeCann and others to support the provision of information on advocacy to youth and their families at transition fairs. Recommending remove and merge with activity 1.2.4 for webinars pertaining to youth advocacy. There you are, Stephen. That might fit there. Find a national or regional presenter and market the webinar to youth. That may work there too, Stephen, if we merged it.
And that's essentially what Stephen's recommendation would do.
Yes.
Adopt that language, so.
Any objections to that activity 1.2.5? Any objections to the recommendation? If not, I propose that we accept Stephen's recommendation, but word it in such a way that we include what he's proposing in this activity, Sean. You know where 1.2.5 is? Stephen said he used a specific language as transitional age, preparing them for self-advocacy. If
Ms.
we
Kim
can,
Bazil has her hand raised. Ms. Bambi Palazzola has her hand raised.
Kim, then Bambi.
If we're going to merge 1.2.5 with 1.2.4 and we moved 4 down to 15,000, is that going to be enough to cover what Stephen wants done?
Great question, Kim. Great question. Sean?
Can I ask my question before, because I think it might lead into what Sean's response will be.
Okay, hold on, Sean. Bambi. Sorry about that, Sean. Go ahead, Bambi.
Is this related to the discussion we've had with Lillian's proposal about the youth leadership, whatever activity that she proposed? Is this part of that, or is it separate?
This is that. That's correct. Mhm.
So that, I think, is gonna, if that is done the way, it's, I mean, I don't know with the COVID and meeting in person, that type of thing, but that's a pretty expensive undertaking, bringing in youth and providing the counselors and the location. If it happens in that way, that would be much more than $15,000.
If it's in person. I mean,
Right. Now,
go ahead.
I talked to Lillian this morning, and she is actually participating, I think, this week in the Oklahoma version of it, and they're doing it virtually, and she was really excited and just saying how wonderful it was doing it virtually, but they've been doing it for a while, so maybe, you know, they have the experience on how to transfer it into a virtual experience. So I know it's possible because she's doing it this week with Oklahoma, but I don't know if I just don't know any more information than that. But if it's in person, it would be much more costlier.
It would be, but I mean, I've factored in the consideration of problems with doing in-person activities in some of this, and y'all can put it whatever you want, and you know, we will move forward with that. But
So I'm hearing with Kim and Bambi is both saying that the $15,000 may not be enough. And then again, folks, we do have to keep in mind that this is for the entire 21 fiscal year. And so if we do, you know, box ourselves into only 15K, would that allow for us to have enough cushion if we are able to go back to in-person activities, you know? So it speaks to the need, like Kim is saying, there's a chunk of money in that 215, you know, like, so the thinking is, it sounds like we're agreeing that 15K is not enough to, you know, put the vision for youth advocacy and transition, you know, to make this activity realized.
Ms. Kim Bazil has her hand raised.
Kim?
So if, Stephen, what you were talking about, is it kind of sort of similar to a PIP for youth? All right, so if we're having $90,000 for PIP, we can't have 15,000 for this.
Good point. Good point. Stephen, do you want to comment on that?
I mean, I wouldn't, I don't know if that was what Lillian was going for, but I mean, my point was just getting that we focus some of our attention on the youth population. So whatever we do, whether that be just simple trainings or having a big conference or having a leadership course, I mean, that can be up to the council to decide. I mean, I was just putting that out there on the radar. I don't really know like specifically what we can do, but I mean, I was thinking maybe a few trainings and yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like we are all in agreement that the $15,000 is not going to be enough for 1.2.5. So do we want to increase that cost by another 15,000? Or leave the 40,000 as it is and then revisit it when we finalize the budget?
Ms. Kim Bazil has her hand raised.
Kim?
I think we should increase it definitely to at least 40, but possibly have it on the board for more. I mean, the youth, that's our leaders to come up. We need to train them now.
Okay. And so two things. So now we need to recommend, are we moving 1.2.4? I mean, 1.2.5 to 1.2.4. That's the first thing. We need to agree to do that. And then the second thing, we need to agree to leave that cost at 40,000. Are we okay with that?
I agree to both.
Okay, great. All right, no objections. Okay, great. Moving on. Activity 1.3.1, it's recommended to keep that activity, which is provide information and support for participation of individuals with developmental disabilities and their families in cross-disability and cultural diverse leadership coalitions and advisory bodies. We're keeping that. All right.
Can you put the screen up? I'm sorry.
Any comments on 1.3.1 before we move on? Okay. All right, we're going to move to activity 1.4.2. Produce, you know what, before I move to that, I apologize for that. 1.3.1, need an explanation and some clarity on support for participation of individuals with disabilities and their families in cross-culturally diverse leadership coalitions. I need some clarity on that. What does that look like? Have we done that?
So
Do we have any examples of when we have done that and how? Any programs have been identified or?
So, I mean, the council is directly responsible for actually appointing some members, like on the advisory council, student behavior and discipline. But when there are other openings that we're aware of, we push those out to some family centers and other people to let people know there's an opportunity to participate. Sometimes,
I think that given the climate that we're in now, especially when we're talking about culturally diverse leadership coalitions, I think that's something we need to continue to explore. And so we are keeping that as a recommendation, but we need to probably look more into, you know, what's out there for that.
agreed.
I'm just making a statement on that. Okay. Activity 1.4.1. Somebody has to tell me there's a hand because I can't see because my weather is bad, so I can only like see the agenda and see y'all. So if a hand's up, please just say the person.
Bambi.
Okay.
It is difficult with Zoom doing the hand raise. Like I find I have to do more to do the virtual hand raise. So in regards to that, and aligned to what your comment was, Hyacinth, yesterday in the meeting, I didn't share when we started, but I made the recommendation for all proposals that we accept, you know, for organizations to be funded, that they need to include in their proposal how they are going to do outreach, if it's that type of proposal, to diverse communities. Looking at racial diversity, because we have identified that that's an issue within the DD Council. I think it's an issue in more ways than that, but we're focusing on the DD Council. And so I made the recommendation that we want all agencies to include a portion of their proposal of how they're gonna do outreach to racially diverse and minority populations. So just want to share that with you. And I guess this needs to be agreed upon maybe later at the end, but that needs to be something that I would want to recommend at the appropriate time.
Absolutely, Bambi, and I completely support that. And that should be noted and should be dictated somewhere that all contracts that we have should include information in a statement and their plans to you know, to address that, what you just proposed. So thank you for that. Absolutely, thanks. Activity 1.4.1, provide financial support from the entirety of the state general funds and technical assistance to 9 Families Helping Families regional resource centers across the state. The recommendation is to add activity to enhance data management systems to increase tracking of needs for people with developmental disabilities. Any objections to that?
I will give you, the information we've received is that recommendation would be very costly. So there are concerns with the data management systems of some family centers, you know, and needs to be updated so that we can better collect information. They are great resources to understand the needs of people with developmental disabilities and their family members. But that recommendation would be extremely costly to achieve, is what I've discovered. So
Do we have any numbers on that, Sean, just
about
for the sake of?
about $10,000 to $20,000 per center was the general number I was given.
That's another $90,000 to
Sean.
$100,000.
Yes, ma'am. It's a lot. There's a lot more than I thought it would be. So
Sean, are you talking about the system that they track their, I know they've been using it for years, and as far as I know, it's not changed in like decades. Is that right? And is that what you're referring to? Okay. And I see Susan made a comment, Susan Reen from Families Helping Families of Southwest Louisiana.
Can someone read the comment?
he said that is an estimate based on another center's cost. That isn't a hard number, but that's the only information I have.
I can share that I know in the governor's office through constituent services that having a type of system like that is something that we from 4 years ago wanted to have. And I don't know if that's ever happened in the way that we would like to have it, because it is a very costly system, which seems odd to me. Like, it seems like it shouldn't be that way, but I know that that's my understanding just for our constituent services. And I think this is pretty much a constituent service type database is what they're talking about. So.
Okay, so it sounds like we do have an objection to that recommendation because of the cost. Is that what I'm hearing?
I would like to, I mean, I don't think that we should say to do this, but I would like to, I know from Susan's comment, what she said was that that's based on one center's experience. And I don't want to cause more work, but if there was any way to just kind of get some ideas, better ideas, more firm ideas on that type of system, that would be good for us to know, because it would be good to have that if it could be done cost effectively.
Okay. Okay, Sean, can we look into that? I know you've done some work on this and the staff has as well, but
Yes, ma'am.
perhaps if we can get some other estimates just to be certain.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Recommendation 2 is add activity to promote the Families Helping Families centers. So, you know, when I looked at this, I was like, this activity under this 1.4.1 to speak to just a general activity. I mean, what is this tied to? What was this tied to? Someone help me with some clarity on that. Just add activity to promote FHA. You just want us to.
I mean, I think that's linked to what the centers are facing right now is, you know, it used to be a collaborative effort of a number of entities supporting these one-stop shops for individuals with developmental disabilities and their family members and professionals as well. And lately it's, well, I mean, there's an RFP that was responded to this week, and they'll make a decision in 2 weeks for education that will, at a best case scenario, reduce the amount of funds available in each region. And even the RFP before that was not the same catchment areas, so it caused more work. And then every once in a while, and this year was one of them, like one of the LGEs, the Human Service District and Authorities, will indicate they may not fund or pay for a center's services. That's or contract with them, and so I guess there's a number of reasons to ensure there's an infrastructure of one-stop shops that is recognized and appreciated by the agencies. So that's just my thoughts.
Ms. Bambi Palazzola and Ms. Kim Bazile have their hands raised.
Hi, Bambi, and then Kim.
So would it be appropriate activity would be, so I know in regards to Act 378, as I understand the intent of that was to have what Sean just described as our state agencies all a part of supporting this one-stop shop centers in our regions. And so perhaps we need to work on communication with our state agencies, legislators, to make sure that everyone is clear on what the intent of that law was. And also, I don't know if there needs to be, maybe that will, the result would be that there needs to be more stronger language within the law about it. It's always tricky to open up laws. So that's just my recommendation, or my just throwing out some comments regarding that.
This is not going to make me popular, especially since I'm on the board of Bayou Land, but Bayou Land Families Helping Families is its own individual nonprofit entity. It's a 501c3. If we need money, we need to go out and we need to raise it ourselves, because we're not owned by anyone and we're not beholden to anyone. And I don't see why the council should be supporting any nonprofit. We need to go out and do that ourselves.
Any other comments on activity 1.4.1? The comment that Bambi made seems appropriate, in including an activity that clearly 378, including clearly what 378 is intended for. So I think what Bambi is saying is an activity to deeply consider, put in there. Bambi, I don't know how you worded it, but I think that's important. But I also want to add, and I'm wondering if it goes in this section, that perhaps an activity can be added for Families Helping Families to be a part of promoting more diversity and equitable or information on diversity, cultural humility, and equitable education, something of that nature. Because what I know for sure is that we should consider doing something along the lines, I'm coming, son, something along the lines where Families Helping Families could be a part of promoting and take a stand for promoting diversity and equitable practices. You know what I'm saying, folks?
So I recall, I think we probably need to pull up those recommendations. We had a subcommittee about recommendations for our Families Helping Families centers. I can picture the meeting in the room that we were in. We had several meetings. And so we might want to pull that up about what were the recommendations, and we're tying it back into Act 378. I mean, the reason why we're tied into these nonprofit centers is because that was the heart of Act 378 that created our DD system in the state. was to have this one-stop shop, and to not have that threatens the continuity of services, so families can have that that location they know that they could go to and get information. Now, I've always been a proponent, it might not have been popular, but there's accountability of these centers that they have to, you know, it's not just you automatically get it. There's deliverables and accountability to that as well, but we have to support that there is a center there, a resource center in each region, to have, you know, families to be supported, and not have to navigate a very complex system that they already have to do in many ways. And I also agree with that. And so I guess I go, what you're saying, Hyacinth, that certainly could be an added, you know, requirement that the centers are showing. I think that most of them do, but that they are really showing it, and sometimes just talking about it and having activities where they're showing that there's something, how they're addressing the diversity issue is important as well.
Ms. Kim Bazile has her hand raised.
Kim?
I just want to say that being tied into a nonprofit and funding a nonprofit are two separate things. So we can be supportive, but we don't have to fund them. And I mean, we already have contracts with these FHFs. We need to push them to go out and raise their own money and support themselves.
Okay, so we're at an impasse, folks. The recommendation is to add activity. FHF, can we agree to adding the activity that includes the information about 378? I'm needing some feedback from you folks. I mean, do we want to come back to this activity? We want to revisit this because we don't have it formulated yet.
I would say yes. Let's just keep it on the table and give some more
Okay,
thought.
so let's table it and move on. Activity 1.4.2, produce and provide information important to individuals with developmental disabilities and their families through a variety of electronic and social media, council website, Facebook, and LADDC news, and produce and disseminate videos and other visual materials featuring information important to individuals with developmental disabilities and their families regarding but not limited to the following topics of self-advocacy, obtaining employment, grade promotion, graduation pathways, and assessing home and community-based services. The cost right now is approximately $51,000. The recommendation is to add an activity to separate out the production of video and visuals. Consider revisiting lists and priorities to consider achievable activities due to COVID-19.
So relative to the last part of that, y'all already yesterday, there were some recommendations, you know, that may cover that, but it's just to separate it out that we felt like that activity has gotten really large, and you know, want us to, you know, the production of certain materials and videos, and just to separate that out, really make it cleaner, and then figure out what the cost would be for this coming year. So.
Okay, so separating out the production of the video and visuals is the recommendation. Does anybody have any objections to that or questions? Okay, moving right along. Activity 1.4.3, provide financial support to develop an emergency response resource for people with developmental disabilities and their family members. Approximate cost. And I'm thinking that this is in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. When I read this, I think of, or any other crisis situations that may come up, but specifically to the COVID-19. So the question is on this, do we want to specifically say it's related to the pandemic? Do we want to say specifically what the financial support would be targeting? And then we have to attach a cost to it if we agree to it. Any comments on that activity?
This is Bambi. So that is, it's really, our discussion yesterday around that was for any emergency response. And it's really important because people typically, we have a one size fits all in emergency response, you know, in general, but our people with developmental disabilities have really specific needs. And Chris had given some activities that he kind of put what I had not did a great job of articulating some things. So basically, you know, to do some trainings throughout the year to focus on the disability specific challenges. And then whenever and then also another activity would be coordinate rapid response regarding disability related needs during disasters. And then also develop and maintain virtual disability specific emergency preparedness resource center. So those are three type of activities that would be involved. So you'd have some ongoing activities, and then also, you know, that they would have to, whoever would get this contract would have to coordinate whenever there is an actual disaster, which we can expect to have at least one a year.
My interpretation of that was actually three separate activities, and those other activities are listed in as 2.74 and 2.75 was the training on emergency preparedness and the coordination. I kind of separated them out because I had to make them fit the goals and objectives in the plan. So
Okay.
those other things are listed elsewhere. There's actually three separate activities based on what y'all discussed yesterday.
And
So
2.7.3, 2.7.4, 2.7. So this one is separate and apart from what Bambi's saying?
They were presented as a group, but when you read the goals and objectives, those other ones, they don't all fit together the same way. And so, I felt like it fit better under goal 2. The other ones fit better under goal 2, objective 7, 2.7. And so, these two right here were the other ones that Bambi mentioned.
So if we can go back to that first one about developing that resource, I'm thinking just to throw a number out. I mean, the thing that we have to consider, you know, putting together, just a compilation of resources, might not think of it as being costly, but you have to make it accessible. And so that may be, you know, it might take various versions, it's not just maybe a web page with resources people can go to, but that it's something that is accessible and disseminated in multiple ways. And so I don't know what $10,000 might be a good number. I don't know, and it might not be. I'm just gonna throw a number out there.
So the emergency response resource, you're talking about in terms of an actual guide or manual of some sort, Bambi? I'm trying to understand when we say emergency response resource. You know, that could be, a resource could be monetary, it could be educational materials, it could be paying for people's therapy. I don't know. So I'm just trying to, are we talking about putting together an educational material as the resource? Or I think I'm just, maybe I'm being going into too deep into
I
the
think that's
weeds or
the
whatever.
part about, and I can't see the other part because it's not on the screen, but I think that is the part about having the resource of like something that's, you know, either website, videos,
Okay.
printed materials, that type of thing. No,
So,
you have to go
so
to
did someone else, was that Chris or I don't, did anyone, does somebody else want to weigh in on this activity item? I mean, if we're gonna do something like videos or educational materials, that's, you know, one cost. But if you're gonna go into something a little bit more, I mean, you know, as a social worker, we see resources. You can't say resource and social worker in the same sentence because we're gonna find a way to spend the money. So what I'm saying is that we need to be able to, you know, be specific, you know, to address what resources we want to put this money to support the families. And so provide financial support to develop emergency response resource. Do we want to say through, you know, educational materials?
this may also need to include not just for people with disabilities, and since I can't see the other two items, it also would be the people who respond, like the social worker. So I can think of like floods and hurricanes. Like right now, the MDAC, which is the coalition that we have now, which is no funding. It's just a coalition of people getting together in agencies. We have like a list that's like a two-page front and back type list. It's very simple. It doesn't meet all the needs, but it was very helpful for those social workers who were working with families with significant, well, their access and functional needs is the term they use. And it was very helpful, a list of all the resources you could, you know, not all of them, but a lot of resources. So that's what I'm thinking, but in a way that is a broader scope and could be more accessible and presented in multiple modalities.
Okay, and so anybody has a comment on this so we can put a number to this and make a decision?
Mr. Stephen.
I have a question. Oh,
Yes, Stephen.
is something like that not already out there? I mean, and we can just piggyback off of what's already out there and not start something. Because the last thing you want to do is give, I mean, I guess resources is great and all, but if there's like things out there that are already exist.
They're, like I said, they're like with MDAC, that's the Emergency Management Disability and Aging Coalition. It is a coalition, there's no funding. It's some state agencies, it's some organizations that just volunteer their time, and they've done the best they can with no funding. And so I think that there could be an organization that could partner with MDAC and MDAC continue to do the work it's done in the what they're available to do. But another entity, if it had some funding, could do this in a way that really could have a greater impact in whenever we have these disasters, which we have very frequently here in Louisiana. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
do you think $10,000 would be too much, or $5,000? I'm just trying to, when we say resource, I just want to make sure that you know, that like you said, Bambi, it can be delivered in all different types of modalities. It could be video, it could be educational materials by hand, paper, you know, website post, you know. So Sean, I mean, you looking at the numbers, what would be a recommendation for that?
I mean, that depends how much y'all want done, and like, you know, to Stephen's point, is if it's sort of a clearinghouse and helping gather things that are created, because there is a lot of things out there. There are a lot of things out there. Instead of developing things is very costly. Pulling things together is not quite as much, but still takes time. And so you know, listing all the things that y'all said, it would be very costly, much more than $10,000 is my guess. But so if you know, like a clearinghouse of stuff that's already produced, it's a lot lower number. If y'all expect production of materials, it's a lot more. That's my short answer. So y'all put a number, and the number y'all put will indicate how much energy y'all expect to come out of this.
Can we comfortably place maybe a $7,500 and then come back and look at it? Because I'm not getting any feedback from the committee on a number. I don't know if anybody wants to throw a number out there and then be held to it.
Brenda Coffey has her hand raised.
As Brenda.
Yes, I like the partnership and the clearinghouse and not reinventing the wheel. If there is already an entity, like we keep saying, MDAC, then that is where we want to point people to. We don't want to have people having to look here and there and everywhere. That is something I share with Mr. Fleming with the onset of COVID-19 announced in our state, that parents had a lot to deal with, including trying to figure out how to teach their children and do various therapies from home. So it becomes overwhelming to have to check all these different agencies to see what they're saying, where as opposed to just limiting which ones. So when I saw that COVID-19 resources was on the DD Council website, that was a relief. That was somewhere simple that I could direct parents or and even some of my school systems too. This is what the DD Council is focusing on, that you can redirect some of your parents to. So that's my comment.
So providing financial support to develop a partnership, maybe we could reword it to include some type of, to recognize that there's an entity that's already established and help support that entity to promote this activity. You know, maybe it's the wording. I will go on ahead and just throw a number out there since nobody else is doing it. I said $7,500, and then we can go back and look at the budget and see if that would fit. Unless there's an objection to this activity, I intend to move on to the next one.
Ms. Brenda Cossey has her hand raised.
Ms. Brenda?
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I forgot to comment on the money. Yes, I think 7,500 is sufficient for now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the committee's discussion on that activity. We are recommending to keep activity 2.4.1, advocate for adequate funding for waiver services. That is a given. Activity 2.5.2, advocate for adequate funding, the expansion of services and consistent implementation of policy across regions, including, if necessary, changes in law and or contracts with local governing entities. The recommendation is to combine 2.5.1 and 2.5.2 together. Any objections to that? That looks like that's a given, but please feel free to share your thoughts if you have an objection to combining 2.5.1 with 2.5.2. Okay, moving right along. Activity 2.6.1, advocate for utilization of the Rule 50 pilot and other opportunities to transition out institutional settings. The recommendation is to keep activity and focus advocacy efforts on the impact of COVID-19 on people in congregate settings. Any discussion and objection, any discussion or objections to this recommendation? Okay, we're gonna move right along and we're gonna adopt that recommendation to make sure we include the advocacy efforts and the impact of COVID-19 on people in congregate settings. Activity 2.7.2, provide financial support for training on supported decision-making. We have to put a cost, a dollar amount to this activity. Any discussions on this?
The ARC did submit a concept proposal, which essentially said, you know, training across 10 regions and support decision-making, estimated cost of $40,000. I mean, that's the number I just threw out there, but it was not really. There are some other national groups that do trainings, like one-day trainings. I think they were like $1,700, which is plus travel. And I'm guessing we could get them to do webinars and stuff. So it's just how much training do y'all want. The discussion yesterday was maybe have some overview introductory trainings and then maybe some more in-depth trainings. So.
Yeah, Sean, I think this is a great idea. I think so much work went into this concept and it has the potential to have such a large impact, but like so many other pieces of legislation on the state and federal level, the bill or the act is only going to be as impactful as it is understood. So I think especially this kind of transformational concept away from interdiction guardianship into an alternative, which can be a frightening thing for parents and loved ones to accept unless they fully understand it. So I completely support this. I know that we're doing something similar or have it in our plan as well.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but there has been a question posed from Miss Ashley McReynolds. Has there been any update on the Roe pilot from OCDD? And then Miss Bambi Palazzola has her hand raised.
Let's address Ashley's question and then Bambi. Sean, did you hear Ashley's question? Have you received? I'm sorry, that's okay. I didn't know if you got a chance to hear a question.
They have not recently. They have used some of the row slots, but that advocacy item, and I'll go back to it, has really been focused just on transitioning people out, regardless if they use the row or not. They've been using the row 50 slots, I believe, to address that lawsuit to get people out of nursing homes. That came out, I believe, is what they're used for now. But I think the recommendation we have is COVID-19 presents another unique challenge of people living in congregate settings relative, to communal diseases and such that may incentivize people to who have been in institutions to not feel as comfortable there. And so it may present some opportunities to use that as a springboard to try and advocate for people to live or to get home community services and move out of congregate settings. So that was our recommendation.
Bambi?
I was thinking about the row and now I'm forgetting. It had to do with the support. Oh, the supported decision making. So activity 2.7.2, it says provide financial support for training. But based on what Chris said, his comments made me think that it in addition to just training, like it needs to be awareness and some type of promotion that it exists. Perhaps offering trainings will bring the awareness, but it is, like you said, it's a transformational kind of shift from where the options we've had in the past. And as we know, many people don't get that information that sometimes we talk about all the time. There's certain people that don't get that information. So I think awareness, promotion needs to be part of that.
So you're saying that when we specifically get into the contracting of this, we need to make sure that awareness is included.
Right.
Okay.
So whatever organizations could do the training, like to include something on how are they going to promote it, through social media or through whatever avenues they see to promote it. They need to include that as well.
Ms. Brenda Kase has her hand raised.
Ms. Brenda?
Yes, awareness and training, awareness and training. And when we promote, we want to remember to do good outreach, diversified outreach. We want to start using this term, supported decision-making, not SDM, supported decision-making, because parents have to learn about this. They have to learn that there is now a new option. So yes, we want to do awareness and training, whether we partner or redirect them to other organizations that are doing it on a national level, or as our Disability Rights of Louisiana is doing something. We want to not wait for the 5-year plan. We want to move on this now.
So activity 2.7.2, and just speaking to what Sean what Stephen mentioned earlier, it ties into that too, that we want to make sure that this information there's an awareness, just like with the transitional youth or transitional age services we want to do for that, and self-advocacy for that. We want to promote the supported decision making as well. And so I think we should deeply consider putting a larger amount of money to back this activity 2.7.2. I don't want to go out on a limb and throw out a number and people feel uncomfortable with it, but I really think we need to consider putting some money in this activity. And so I don't see anybody, so you say the name, I'm sorry. Who's
Liz
hands up?
has her hand raised, and Ms.
Liz.
Kase.
Liz and Brenda.
The recommendation, what was the organization that gave the recommendation early, the dollar amount?
The Arc of Louisiana.
And what was that?
$40,000.
Was there any other details? Was it video training, in-person training? Were there any details for the 40,000 estimate?
Are y'all waiting on me? I'm sorry. I couldn't tell if Brenda had asked a question and was waiting for an answer.
Well, we mentioned your name first, Liz, but I think you couldn't come in, so Ms. Brenda was able to ask her question.
Okay, no problem. I want to go back to and remind everyone that tutorship starts between 15 and 18. So it is absolutely critical to ensure that as the supported decision-making is approached in the transition years, because if parents decide to do the tutorship, then I'm not saying it can't be reversed, but it's a lot easier if they know their options prior to putting something in place. And considering there's a large population that still doesn't know about special needs trusts and tutorship and interdiction, there's definitely a need for this and a way to we have to get this out there so that they are aware of this, to avoid from getting the more restrictive things put in place than the least restricted. So it's definitely something we need to heavily consider, in my opinion, because of the potential of where we could be if people are interdicting their kids or doing tutorship when they could have the supported decision making.
Yes. So it sounds like we have committee members, and we've heard from folks who feel strongly that this activity should be funded. We have a proposal from, for 40,000. I see Sean has been able to pull some information up regarding the proposal. Committee members, we would like to go on ahead and add a dollar amount to this, and then of course, make any adjustments that we need to when we finalize the budget. Committee, are we okay with the $40,000 that was proposed?
Ms.
Any
Kim
objections?
Bazile has her hand raised. Also, there is a chat comment from Miss Ashley McReynolds and Miss Kelly Monroe that
Okay.
was both web-based and in-person training.
I will take the comment from Kelly Monroe first, and then Ashley, and then ask for the committee and council member to remain as the last comment. So Kelly Monroe, please go first.
No, I'm sorry. I just read her comment that was posted in chat.
Okay, can you read it again?
It was both web-based and in-person training.
Okay, thank you. Ashley McReynolds, does she have a comment?
It was the same post.
Thank you. All right, and who was the committee member that had a question, or the council member?
Miss Kim
It's
Bazile.
me.
Okay, hi, Kim.
Can you give us a second to read? And Sean, can you put it back up what the ARC sent in, and give us a second to read it before we go to any vote?
Yes, Kim, that we can do that, but I want us to
And
make
Sean,
sure
I'm
that we
blind.
doesn't mean that we have to commit to that proposal from the ARC. I mean, is that just because the ARC submitted a proposal, that means that's the vendor we have to select?
No, I understand that, but at least I can see what they're proposing goes into 40,000 and see if we think that's
Right.
sufficient.
Oh, yeah, I'm agreeing with you on that. I just wanted you to know that just because they proposed it doesn't mean that we will just necessarily have to go with.
Sean, I hate to ask you, can you make it larger? I am blind.
And so we can take a minute to review that.
I'll make it larger, but
That's it. Perfect.
but I'm gonna scroll down a little bit because
Okay.
the whole thing is what I was struggling with. I'm sorry. Now I jumped too far down. So I'll start at the top. I'll leave the top up for a little while. Is that big enough?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I'll scroll down to the bottom of it now.
Local. Thank you, Sean.
You're welcome. Hyacinth, do you want me to go back to the plan?
Yeah, that's fine. Please go back to the plan. So we just need to, if we're in agreement, we want to attach a dollar amount to this activity, and then we can go back and revisit and make any adjustments when we review the final budget. That's okay. And so if we're in agreement, we would like to attach $40,000 to that, to the cost for this activity. If there's an objection, we can always adjust it at the, in the final budget. Moving along, activity 2.7.3, provide financial support to establish a pilot program on police tactics, approaches, and resources in dealing with individuals with developmental disabilities. Any discussion on this activity? Any objections on this activity? So I guess the question would be that I want to pose to the committee, would it be this pilot program when we get into, I guess when we start talking about the specifics, would it be to support the entire state? Would it just be regions that we're just trying to pilot this program in, specific regions, metropolitan regions? Did anybody have a discussion about that?
We didn't talk about the regions. I think my idea would be you put a dollar amount and you see what type of proposals you get back. You could get some regionally based proposals. It could be just one parish. It could be multiple different pilots, and kind of see where you're getting the most, what we think is the most effective type of technical assistance for the dollar amount. I think that's kind of would be our goal, whenever we actually would select the proposal. That's just my thoughts on it.
Are there any questions about activity 2.7.3? Any comments or objections? Okay, so now we have to decide a dollar amount for 2.7.3. Any recommendations?
Miss Brenda Casse has her hand raised.
Ms. Brenda?
Yes, it says police tactics, so that's different from first responders in general. This is specifically in regard.
I believe Ms. Brenda went out a little bit, but her question was, is this directed specifically to police, or is this including other first responders? And Ms. Brenda, are you back on so you can?
Yes, I believe it was, I gotta get the acronym right. Strengthening outcomes with autism resources, SOAR. Provided
yes.
a training for first responders. It was targeted to first responders. It was specifically, if I recall, I want to say autism, but it may have not just been autism. But as a result, again, I'm trying to get clarification, but as a result of it saying first responders, we had a broad group of first responders that came out, as well as some of our community partners, like our family fitness centers, sent people to train who work with our youth. And therefore, my child and other children were able to to feel secure when they went to different facilities that summer. So I just wanted clarification. Are we just doing this for law enforcement or for first responders?
Anyone want to add a comment to that? I'm open to adding first responders to it and to be specific as well, because I think that's beneficial. But I also want to not lose sight that we really want to make sure that whoever gets this contract, make sure that that contract specifically includes that law enforcement and address police tactics, because what we are experiencing with the brutality. And so I am open to adding first responders to it as well. But we just want to make sure that we don't lose sight of that law enforcement component in there. So should we, I don't mind recommending an amended to amend that activity to include first responders if the committee's okay with that. Committee?
I concur.
I concur.
Okay, thanks. Okay, thanks, Ms. Brenda. Anybody else, any comments? All right. So now we need to add a dollar amount to that, folks. And if it's a pilot program, we need to discuss what would be appropriate to assign to that amount. Any recommendations? I know that there's some programs out there. Ms. Brenda talked about SOAR, but I did look into some programs nationally that's already out there that police districts have done. So I guess the conversation would be, would this be a partnership of something that's already existing, like, I don't, if a parish has something already in place, like what would that look like? And I think that would help us kind of narrow down the cost, right? So I think, I don't know if Jefferson Parish had something. Sean, I think we talked about, you and I spoke about this weeks ago, and I think Jefferson
Lafayette,
Parish had something, right?
no, well, there was a request to Jefferson Parish, and last I
Request to
heard
Jefferson.
that it did not, the sheriff didn't approve
So he
it.
didn't approve it.
I-
Okay.
As that might have been a year ago, so something could have happened since then. I know in Lafayette Parish, they have it's an interesting program, as they actually have a deputy who is assigned for basically developmental disabilities. And it's what she does is she brings officers to the home. She engages the families that identify that have people with developmental disabilities, and then she'll bring the officers who they do training, and then they also do actually getting those officers who do patrol to stop by those homes and introduce themselves to the family and to the person with a developmental disability. It seems to be successful. Like, I think that's the next level and that's kind of what we talked about yesterday, that the training is great and we need it in a large way, in a large scale training. But if you really want impact, it really has to be like helping those departments to then build relationships, like community policing type, as I understand that to be, that they're actually building relationships with the developmental disability community that they serve and the people that have those disabilities. And so when you think about in regards to a dollar amount, I mean, it could be millions of dollars. It depends on how you want to do it. If you're just looking at one parish, if you look, if you want to look at that scale, I mean, we have a project we've been funding for early childhood that we've been funding for $90,000 a year, and that's to train early childhood teachers. And so, this is something that to me, it would be costly.
It will be costly, Bambi, but I like the idea that we're getting ahead of this. We're getting out front, y'all. And this is coming from us, as a DD council. It's showing that we are getting in front of this, and that we are committed. And so I'm hearing you too. It's like, I'm like, I guess it speaks to the 215 that Kim is like, what are we doing with the 215? So, it's like, if you give me, I'm gonna spend the money, so I don't want to put a number out there but I would like to get feedback from the committee as to what they think is an appropriate number, because this is a need, especially in the times that we're in right now. So
Ms. Brenda Casse has her hand raised.
Ms. Brenda?
Yes, I'm hoping that although it's a pilot, that we are thinking about multiple parishes or rather multiple regions, let's say regions. I kind of flinch when we have pilots and then you get calls, well, why wasn't it in my region? Why didn't they offer for my area? We needed it more. Who did the study? We need help too. When are we going to get help? So if we could, I think, I know we have our 10 regions, but yeah, multiple regions, north to south, east to west. And the jumping ahead comment, I see this as proactive,
Yes,
not reactive. It may just be getting to our plan, but again, we have entities who have been reaching out to to first responders for years, because they have reached out to us. So we want to make sure we put this in the right posture, that this is proactive, not reactive, that this is something that we need for communities to improve relationships, to foster relationships. I believe that many of our first responders are seeking help before the climate like this existed, but there was no funding. So I want the money to go up. 40,000 is too small. What that is for one parish? For one region? That's what it looks like to me. We have 10.
Did y'all say a dollar figure? Did I miss a dollar figure?
Bambi's passionate about the dollar figure. I am, and it sounds like Ms. Brenda is. I want to hear from other committee members before we put a number to it, and then we can revisit it at the end.
What was the 40,000 for as far as pilot? Was it thinking of 1, 2, 3 regions? What was it?
Well, we did not specify regions. We didn't even get that far. Because we figured, I guess, whoever we get to partner to do the contract would, we'll get more specific in that. But I understand your question. Is it global or what, is it statewide? And I guess that kind of helps us hone in the cost. But I would like to propose that we put 50,000 into this, and then we'll go back and revisit it. Activity 2.74, provide financial support to establish a training program on emergency preparedness and response relative to people with developmental disabilities. And this speaks to the previous activity that we talked about with the resource and developing that resource. And then also activity 2.7.5, provide financial support to coordinate rapid response during a natural disaster or state of emergency for individuals with the most severe disabilities and medical conditions. We need to attach some dollar amounts to these activities if there are no objections. Any discussion on those two activities?
Ms. Chair.
Yes, Stephen?
We have, I just noticed a comment in the chat box.
Thanks, I can't see it.
Last activity.
Thanks for helping me with that. I can't see it.
You want me to read it out?
Yes, please, thanks.
It's from Ashley McReynolds. It says, the ARC of Louisiana will be training all Jefferson Parish's 800 sheriff's officers every month. And they are also going in person to Magnolia, and we will be partnering with ARC of GNO to increase direct interactions. And she also followed up with, definitely needs to be a large amount of money.
Thanks, Ashley, for comment. I thought that Jefferson was doing something. I knew I didn't miss, I really understood. So thanks, Ashley, for your comment. Thanks for clarifying that. And so we did assign 50,000 to that budget, Ashley, and then we will revisit it once we get to the budget page. So thanks for your comment on that. Okay, folks, 2.7.4, 2.7.5. So those two activities were discussed yesterday, and we need to put a cost to that, put a dollar amount, or any comments about those two activities. Any recommendations for a dollar amount?
Maybe, this is Chris, maybe 10,000 for each.
Perfect, Chris. You were reading my mind. 10,000 for 2.7.4 and 10,000 for 2.7.5. We'll put that money there and then revisit the budget if there's no objection. Activity 2.8.1, publicize healthcare provider continuing education opportunities. The recommendation is to add activity to advocate for waivers to provide access to services listed in the freedom of choice provider listing, continue exemptions and flexibilities initiated with COVID-19, and consider individualized emergency preparedness considerations for people with severe disabilities and medical issues. Any comments about this activity? It seems like everyone is in agreement with this one, but I just want to make sure and leave it open. Are there any comments to this activity? Any objections or any other recommendations? Okay, great. We will adopt those recommendations. Activity 2.9.1, provide financial support for training on sexuality and relationships and to build awareness and skills with recognizing and handling sexual abuse and exploitation of people with developmental disabilities and publicize available webinars on these topics. Approximate cost $32,000. Recommendation, expand to cover all abuse and exploitations with consideration of DRL report recommendations and also offer it online. So we already have a contractual agreement with a provider that provides this workshop and training.
So
Go ahead, Sean.
there were a number of concept proposals related to differing types of training related to healthy and unhealthy relationships, sexual. This was one of them to continue this. This was actually a recommendation from the Self-Determination Community Inclusion Committee to continue this training. But then there were some other trainings. There were some other concept proposals presented that the committee had discussed, and I think there needs to be some clarity on which specifically kind of what degree of training. Some of them were one-day training, some of them were more intensive trainings, et cetera, that the direction y'all want to go in and the dollar figure.
Do we have anybody here on that committee that can speak to this activity, just to give a quick, explanation of what the vision was for self-determination? Anybody that sits in that committee, are any of those people online? And it's present right now that can offer that, what Sean is asking? Yeah, I guess not. Okay, the recommendation is to expand, cover all abuse. Is that your question, Sean? Like, kind of what does that mean? What is that?
Hold on, I'll go pull up what we received, and that might help.
Okay, all right.
Miss Annie Coomer has a comment to make.
Hi, Amy. Yes, Amy, please make your comment.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for letting me speak. I'm one of the individuals who submitted the concept proposal, one of the concept proposals for the sexual education. And I just wanted to point out a few things about the program that is a different kind of implementation and a few different things that my company does with this risk reduction. Jeff Arsenault and myself got trained through Elevate Us training. It's a standard curriculum that's been adopted by the DDC in New York and the DDC in Michigan. The woman who teaches us who taught the course has been teaching this kind of training for 10 years. The curriculum is created by individuals with disabilities for individuals with disabilities. And we also cover doing staff training and parent training. Jeff and I just recently finished a course in partnership with North Shore Families Helping Families online. And we've also worked with the International and Ethnic Women's Studies group in New Orleans to try and train their staff. We're working up a training to do with their staff to make them more inclusive when they go into the New Orleans public schools. So that's how ours is a little bit different, because we do focus on staff training who work with individuals with developmental disabilities. So, and I'll be here if anyone has any other questions.
I have a question.
Steven?
Yes.
Miss Annie, did you mention yesterday that once an individual goes through that training, they have the capability to train other individuals with developmental disabilities?
Well, so there's several different types of trainings that we can do. This is for the 1-year proposal. I probably spoke a little bit too early. Jeff and I did submit a 5-year proposal to where when we first go into the communities, so we're going to do the 10 regions of the state of Louisiana. We will do a first round of classes to meet and identify people who would want to or who would be eligible to team teach, because each of these classes, one instructor is supposed to be someone who has a family member with a disability, and the other instructor is supposed to be someone with a disability. So we're pulling from a unique population, and we have to make sure that they're comfortable with the topic and able to do it. But our 5-year goal is to have these team teachers throughout the state of Louisiana who can self-sustain this program and continue with the education and with the curriculum without us having to put money into this program every single year. It will be a self-sustaining program. Did that answer the question? So in year 1, we wouldn't be training people to teach the class. That would happen if we get approved for funding for a 5-year plan, so that in our community, everyone has their own resources to go to, but it's a consistent resource throughout the state. It's a peer-reviewed curriculum, and other DDCs have taken it on.
Any other questions? And so I'm very interested in getting some more information. Thanks, Ms. Amy, for sharing your vision for the 1-year and 5-year, but I am interested in getting more information because I'm very interested in the trainer, because anything that can promote employment of our self-advocates, I think is a good thing. And so I'm not certain if it would take 5 years, because I wouldn't want to take 5 years to ensure that self-advocates are employed. But I think the idea of them being able to provide the training, I think it's perfect, and that speaks to our mission. And so I guess the conversation would be to see whether or not there's a conflict of interest that's there. There's a couple of things we would probably have to look into before, committing to a provider.
Right.
But,
Ms. Brenda Kase has her hand raised.
Yes, Ms. Brenda.
I heard Ms. Coomer, I think it was, mention a diversity point. And another one would be linguistic diversity, including with train the trainer. We want to reach as many cultures as we possibly can with this type of training. And almost any resource that we provide, whether it's in person or online, and how it would be handled if you had someone who was a Braille reader, someone who's blind, had vision concerns. Just make it, see if it could be as diverse as possible. Because real quickly, sometimes people don't participate because they don't see the keywords, the words that catch them. So they say, oh, that's not for me.
I completely understand what you're saying. And actually, Elevatus Training has just come out with a new curriculum edition. And it's for people who are nonverbal or pre-verbal, or people who are vision impaired and hearing impaired. It just came out. I have actually placed it on order for myself to receive it. And Jeff and I are going to take a training on how to best utilize that new curriculum. So as of right now, we are not completely good to go on that curriculum, but we will be by the fall. They didn't give us a date on when the training would be held, but we're definitely attending it. And we're so excited to be able to incorporate all types of disabilities in our trainings, and not just the typical ones that get accommodated so easily. Thank you for asking.
Committee, any other comments or questions regarding activity 2.9.1. We have a proposed cost of 32,000 there. Any objections to that? Okay,
Is
we'll leave.
that cost 32,000 for a particular one, or is that?
So when you look at all the different, I think there were 4 different concept proposals on relationships and sexual abuse exploitation. The one that Ms. Honeycomb was just discussing was 49,000. It was for the 10 series of 8-week courses. This 32,000, I think it was actually 26,000. I think it was 32,000 this past year, but it's for the one-day trainings from Team Dynamics. There are also, Honeycomb and Jeff Arsenault also presented another one for $10,000. That was, I think, more of a, and she can speak more clearly to it. This seems like more single day sort of trainings. So, I mean, my question to y'all is just a request for specificity on which direction y'all want to go in. I think Team Dynamics, I know Team Dynamics has been doing a fabulous job. It's whether y'all want to provide a little different direction or a little different, even Team Dynamics offered a different proposal. So I just need direction from y'all about where y'all want to go with it. And this was, even to your point, is relative to the proposal by Team Dynamics. But it was, I think theirs was 26,675, I believe. And I'll pull theirs up for y'all to look at theirs as well.
So I'm just jumping in, y'all. I'm sorry about that. I had an opportunity to participate and attend the workshops that Team Dynamic hosted, and they do an exceptional job. Even the materials folks that they disseminate are very user-friendly and, you know, non-judgmental. They do a really good job at that. And so I was concerned last year that the funding, because I have a tendency to believe that if a program is working and they're doing well and they can show the data that they're doing well and that it's beneficial to our families, that we should consider continuing to fund that program. And if we had dollars left over, to even consider increasing that dollar amount so they can provide that information to as many families as they can, or individuals as they can throughout the state. And so witnessing what they have provided to us, and they have always submitted the data when we asked for accountability, I still feel strongly that we should continue to support the vision that Team Dynamics has done for us, for our families. And so I don't want to do anything that's going to change the dollar amount that they have been receiving thus far for their work. With that being said, certainly I think that the committee is open to listening to other and entertaining other proposals and recommendations, because I'm very intrigued about the trainer to train our self-advocates, you know, to actually do the work themselves. So again, I think it's a dollar issue, and we have to look at and see, you know, are we wanting 2 programs to exist and, you know, to function, to do similar but yet different things. I mean, I certainly do not want any decision moving forward to affect the existing dollar amount that we have proposed for Team Dynamics thus far. That's my opinion. So, but you know,
that was kind of my thing. Would it be possible? Would it be out of line to maybe see about funding both. And I mean, I figured the more opportunities, the better.
So I want to be clear, right now, y'all are not deciding whether to fund one or the other one of these entities to do it. Both of these organizations have presented concept proposals. In my opinion, it's like they each have single day trainings and they both have multi-day trainings. And so I think what I'm asking, or I'm suggesting y'all make a decision on, is do y'all want to continue with the single day trainings? And y'all can do both, but then there'll be less of each. And so what I showed y'all just now was Team Dynamics presented each one of their 3-day series is $11,000. So how many of if y'all want to go that direction, whatever amount of money y'all put in here will indicate how much. And Annie Cumber's organization indicated like $49,000 would do 10 8-week series. So of course we could always, if y'all have less than that, y'all, we could negotiate. We only want 5 8-week series option or something. My question to y'all is, do y'all want the single day training opportunities, or do y'all want multi-day? Because I think, we would do an SOP and y'all would have to weigh whether y'all, I'm sure both of these organizations and maybe others would apply, and that decision would be later down the road, if that helps y'all.
Ms. Brenda Casse has her hand raised.
Ms. Brenda?
Yes, parents need options. So that would seem both types of proposals. Would he say single day, multi-day? Parents need options.
Ms. Kim Bazil has her hand raised.
Ms. Kim?
I'm sorry, I had to step away. So if y'all have already discussed this, just skip over it. Do we have any data that shows that the single day is more successful than the 8-week or vice versa? I know sometimes it's difficult for people to set aside 8 weeks or, 1 day a week, just to see if we have any data.
I do. They may have data, but I do not have that for you, Kim. These organizations.
Kim, if you would like, I can get exact data from Catherine McLaughlin, who creates the program, and why they chose an 8-week format instead of a single day. The 8-week format is for individuals with developmental disabilities, and it's for self-advocates. Staff training is a 1 day and parent training is a 1 day. But the 8-week program is broken up so it's done in small pieces for people with developmental disabilities. And it's an hour and a half each week.
Okay.
So I hope that answered your question.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments about activity 2.9.1? Right now we have a dollar amount of $32,000. Sean, is that including our existing contract and
that is just a placeholder from last year. That is how much is in the current plan.
I remember that.
Nothing to do with what y'all are doing.
I remember that. I remember that. I remember that. I remember that number.
I'll delete it. Might be easier to process.
It's okay. I remember that number because I think before there was that, I think Team Dynamics had something like 26,000, 27,000, and they did a lot of work with that 27,000. Because I remember them bringing the data for us to look at. Kim, I don't know if you were part of that. I think maybe you were at that meeting and they were able to show us what they did with the money. So I guess the conversation, we need to make a decision on, do we want to put a little bit more funding in activity 2.9.1 and then have a discussion, later on when it comes to, I guess, specifics with, Sean is asking about single day or multi-day. and people are like a little confused on that.
Well, would Brenda recommended a hybrid? I mean, I just need to know if y'all have proposals.
I didn't hear her say hybrid. I heard her say parents need options.
Options. That's my interpretation. Yeah.
No, hybrid doesn't need.
Well, I mean, I interpret it as having both single day options available and
Okay.
day. I just need to know what y'all will is.
Any comments on that,
Ms.
committee?
Brenda Constay's hand is raised and Ms. Kim Bazil's hand is raised.
Miss Brenda, then Kim, Miss Kim.
From what I heard Annie say, is that it's the 1 day is for staff and parents, and the 8-week is for individuals with developmental disabilities. So they're not the same classes. Am I correct?
Is Miss Amy still on? Was her name Miss Amy?
Annie.
Annie, Miss Annie, are you still on to answer that question?
I'll pull her back into the panelist mode. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's all right. Right, Kim. That's what I gathered too. One is for self-advocates and one is for parents and staff.
One class is for self-advocates, and then the 8-week course is for self-advocates. So our last one we did on Wednesdays from 6 to 7:30, and we met via Zoom because of COVID-19. And the parent training is a 1-day thing, and the staff training is a 1-day thing. It's not even the staff is a longer one. It's about, I believe it's 6 hours, and the parent training is a 2-hour course or class.
Parent training is 2-hour course. Okay.
Yeah. And that can be done over Zoom or in person.
Okay.
But when we submitted the concept proposals, it was before COVID-19. So if we're able to do it via Zoom, then that changes, what we expect to spend.
So committee, I'm comfortable with making any recommendation that will not decrease the amount of funding for the existing contract that we have in place. So basically, if we propose something if we propose 40,000, I do not want the existing contract that we have in place, their contract, to be reduced, because they have been able to show outcomes. They have been able to produce the data that, that's out there. But I want us to be willing to entertain the other idea that's in front of us too as well. But I don't want it to do, and I think Stephen is saying the same thing. We don't want to do something that's going to affect the money that's there for the existing contract, because they have been able to show outcomes, produce outcomes.
A reminder that Ms. Brenda Cossay has her hand raised.
Miss Brenda, sorry, Miss Brenda.
That's okay. Yes. I think we should bump the money up. I don't remember what was the projection that Ms. Kumar had, but we definitely want to put more funding into this. I don't know, 40,000 was kind of low.
Can we do 50?
That sounds good. That sounds okay. 50, 55, because we want to give parents options. We want to give them many opportunities to be able to participate.
So committee, I hear a proposal of 55,000. If there's no objection, we are going to propose that amount and then revisit it at the end. Y'all are hanging in there. And so this is awesome. We're getting through it. We will finish on time. I can assure you of that. Here we are on activity. Now we're on activity 3.1.1. We are going to be keeping that activity. Activity 3.1.2, the recommendation is to merge. Yes, did I skip?
I mean, that was just our recommendation. I think y'all need to make that decision.
For 3.1.1, Sean?
Really all of them. I mean, we put our thoughts in there for y'all to consider. Okay. But yeah, I just want you to make sure that.
So I'll read it again, because I was reading the other ones before. I'll read it. Activity 3.1.1, advocate for increased focus and capacity within Louisiana Department of Education to address special education, including specific area issues, for example, disability, topical, et cetera. So do we recommend keeping that activity? Any objections? Okay. Okay, no objections. Activity 3.1.2, advocate for increased infrastructure of on-site training and technical assistance provided to parents and school simultaneously. The recommendation is to merge 3.1.2 to 3.2.3. And so we'll get there in a second into 3.1.2. Okay. So we'll get to that. I'll get to that in a second. So I'll reread that when I get to that line. Objective 3.2. We're going to keep that one. I don't need to, there's no changes to that noted. Activity 3.2.1, advocate for an accountability system to value students with disabilities and measure programs and outcomes based on individualized student goals and needs, including service delivery. The recommendation is to remove that activity.
Ms. Brenda Casse has her hand raised.
Ms. Brenda?
Yes. Activity 3.1.2.
Yes, Ms. Brenda, we're going to come back to that one. Yes, ma'am.
On-site. That doesn't mean virtual.
Right. And we're going to come back to that one when we get to 3.2.3. So keep that in mind because I'm going to read it and we're going to go and make a determination how we want to word it if we're merging it. Okay. So keep that there because I'll forget. All right. Okay. So 3.2.1, advocate for an accountability system to value students with disabilities and measure programs and outcomes based on individualized student goals and needs, including service delivery. The recommendation is to remove that activity. Any objections to that? Activity 3.2.2, advocate for improved complaint and monitoring procedures. The recommendation is to remove that activity. Any objection to that? Okay, so now we're at activity 3.2.3, which the recommendation is to merge advocate for a support structure in school systems that assures adequate understanding and skill to develop and implement IEPs. Advocate for increased infrastructure, on-site training, and technical assistance provided to parents and schools simultaneously. Recommendation from a question from our council member, Ms. Brenda, was to include virtual or have a discussion surrounding that. Ms. Brenda, do you want to expound on that recommendation?
And we could just remove the term on-site, so it doesn't specify how the training is delivered. Would be my
All right, so we'll change the way that wording is so it doesn't specify delivery. Okay, if we're in agreement, we're in agreement to merging 3.2.3 into 3.1.2.
Ms. Brenda Casse has her hand raised.
Ms. Brenda?
I'm just thinking anything with parents, they need options. They need versatility. I can't come on site to do an IEP. I can't come on site to do a training. I'm driving in my car, but I can listen. I'm at home, my child is sick. I can get on a webinar.
The recommendation is to remove the word on-site and leave it as training and technical assistance and just leave it at that and not specify so that we can offer options to parents when they are receiving technical assistance and developing IEPs. Any other comments or recommendations about the merging of those two activities?
If I may address, this is Courtney.
Yes, Courtney?
So I just want to make sure that everyone understands that by removing activity 3.2.1, 3.2.2, and merging 3.2.3 would then leave objective 3.2 without an activity. So that objective will become, I guess we call ghosted on our plan, and it will just say that that objective was addressed during certain years of the council's 5-year plan.
This is just, y'all, this is because we're in the 5th year, we're going into the 5th year of the plan. You can look at some other objectives where we've already done that too, where you're not addressing every objective every year. And that's basically what Courtney's referring to, just to prepare y'all for what it would look like.
So that means objective 3.2 will not have an activity, correct?
Correct, and it will look like, I'll go up and show y'all some that have already been ghosted. It's like objective 2.1, objective 2.2, objective 2.3. Y'all don't have activities. Y'all have not had activities on some of these for 2 or 3 years. And so that's what that objective will look like. Okay.
Any comments or questions about that and these changes? Activity, so we are agreeing to merge 3.2.3 into 3.1.2. We are proposing to remove activity 3.2.2, advocate for improved complaint and monitoring procedures. And again, we are merging 3.2.3 into 3.1.2. Moving down to activity 3.4.1, provide information and promote inclusion and acceptance of effective models of school culture. The recommendation is to remove that activity.
I think you jumped 3.3, Hyacinth.
Did I really? I apologize for that. Objective 3.3, I'm sorry, y'all, I apologize. Students with developmental disabilities will benefit from changes consistent with council positions in policy and practice in educational agencies and programs. We have no comments about that objective. Okay, activity 3.3.1, advocate for educational systems change based on emergent education issues. Activity 3.4, an increased number of students with disabilities are included in school culture. Activity 3.4.1, provide information and provide inclusion and acceptance of effective models of school culture. The recommendation is to remove that activity. Any comments or questions about that recommendation? Activity 3.4.2, provide financial support to establish a post-secondary inclusive education alliance to provide mentoring and technical assistance, post-training events, and develop resources designed to build the capacity of Louisiana post-secondary institutions and providing inclusive post-secondary education opportunities for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities throughout Louisiana. The recommendation is to keep that activity.
Ms. Brenda Kase has her hand raised.
Ms. Brenda?
Activity 3.4.1, why was it recommended removed?
It's just lack of clarity in terms of what information to promote, basically. I mean, we do share stuff on Facebook and other social media on, good best practices and inclusion. but I don't feel like we've really had a handle on what, extra we would do relative to this activity. Is the short of it. I mean, if we had more guidance or more thoughts, I'd welcome them. I just, we do provide information in, I think it's 1.4.2 on all this stuff, including in schools. And I don't think this adds anything to what we share and promote.
We already provide school culture information.
Yeah, yes, I mean, we do. Mhm.
So you're telling me that this activity was already merged into another activity?
It's just duplicative in terms of,
Duplicative. Mhm.
yeah, when we're sharing information and stuff, this is specific to education in school, but it's no different than us sharing information on employment or, just basic disability information. So
Is it expressed that way? This caught my eye because it says school culture.
it's not, I mean, it's not expressed that way in that other activity, no.
Well, I would like for it to remain. That's my recommendation because it highlights school culture. It highlights an aspect of inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
And it draws attention that this is relevant. It's not a part of something else, and maybe we will, maybe we won't.
Anybody have any other comments about the recommendation to leave activity 3.4.1 in place and not to remove it? Any comments from the committee? Is it possible, Sean, that we can also add the word climate to that? School culture and climate, school climate and culture. If we decide to leave activity 3.4.1 in place. Any thoughts on adding climate to that?
Ms. Brenda Casse has her hand raised.
Ms. Brenda?
Yes, definitely add climate. Definitely add climate, and let's expand on this. Let's,
Is it possible that we can leave 3.4.1 in place with the addition of climate and then have some discussion about expanding that? Sean, because we know that this is a living document.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, great. All right, so we're gonna move to that. Activity, I did that one. Okay, so for 3.4.2 in the Post-Secondary Inclusive Education Alliance, the funding will continue at 40,000. We're asking to keep that activity. Okay, now we're moving to goal 4, which is students with disabilities are considered from the initial phases to the completion of planning and program development of educational policies and initiatives. Objective 4.1 was accomplished during fiscal year 2017. Objective 4.2 speaks to all schools, including charter and magnet, accepting public dollars in early childhood centers will accept and serve all students with disabilities appropriately. Activity 4.2.1 states advocate for type 2 and type 5 charter schools to be required to meet 85% rule of enrolling students with disabilities at rates similar to those found in traditional public schools. The recommendation is to merge 4.2.1 with 4.2.2. 4.2.2 states advocate for and monitor equitable funding based on minimum foundation program based on MFP. The recommendation is to merge 4.2.1 with 4.2.2. Any objections to that? Any comments? Okay, so it's agreed that we will merge those two activities. Activity 4.2.3, provide financial support for professional development opportunities for childcare providers and early steps interventionists to build capacity with including children with disabilities and early learning centers within local communities. The cost now is $90,000. The recommendation is to offer online training opportunities for knowledge building with plan for on-site support and skills development as permitted. Any comments about activity 4.2.3 or objections? Okay, so we're proposing to add offer online training.
I'm sorry,
Yes,
Ms. Brenda
please.
Conce has her hand raised.
Ms. Brenda?
Yes, with that projected cost, pre or post COVID-19? Pre-COVID-19?
That's a pre-COVID-19 cost, Ms. Brenda.
It looks low. It looks low.
So I want to comment on that as soon as you get your comment out.
It looks low. I'm just thinking, I've been participating in several state webinars that deal with this area and early learning centers and local communities impacts from COVID-19. Urban League has been hosting them also. And I want to make sure that we're able to, just the nature of what they're dealing with, that we're able to help as much as possible. 90,000 is good. We have a lot of parents that are going back to work too.
Any other comments from the committee on this early steps?
Has her hand raised.
Who, ma'am?
Ms. Kim McHugh.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
If I remember correctly, last year at this meeting, we had no data supporting that this was an effective program. And we had no data supporting that the $90,000 we spent was put to good use. So do we have that data this year? Because I hate to keep throwing good money after bad if we have no data to support us spending that money.
And so that was my comment I wanted to make him as well. We have requested data, and Ms. Brenda, you weren't privileged to that last year. We have requested data to just to figure out where the 90,000 is going. And I'm not sure if we received that as of yet. And some committee members were very reluctant to even go along with the 90,000 if the data wasn't produced. And I believe we had someone come and speak to one of our committee meetings on this matter, and they assured us and promised us that data was going to be produced. So Sean, have you received anything that we can, share with the committee to offer some assurance that that request was honored?
No, I don't. I mean, a lot of those activities were disrupted, but I do not think we have that data right now.
Yeah.
And Courtney, correct me if I'm wrong, please.
Correct. When COVID-19 pandemic started, that prevented the one-on-one coaching sessions from being conducted. So the majority of this contract was not able to be conducted because of, inability to offer coaching one-on-one.
But we requested this information over a year ago for pre-COVID, for the prior year. So I cannot in good conscience say we're going to give them another $90,000 until they show us data where they have been successful.
And I have to concur with Ms. Kim on that. We have requested this information and we have not received anything from them. And I mean, I am not comfortable with adding another 90,000 to a program. And we recognize that early intervention is key. My goodness, we all share that. I think we all share that. But I think at this point, we need to have some serious conversations about where this money's going, and we need to be able to be accountable to the public for where these dollars are going. So listen, we open for any comments from the committee to help us with this.
I believe Ms. Kim Bazile has her hand raised.
Ms. Kim?
If no one else has any other comments, unless they can provide data to us before or during our July meeting where the full council can vote on it, we have to remove this. They've had plenty enough time.
So I'm hearing that we are still we're gonna offer opportunity for early steps to provide us some information, some data as it relates to what they have been able to do with the $90,000. We're asking that they supply us something prior to our July meeting so that we could entertain continuing funding this contract. So if the decision is to continue to fund the contract, committee, are you open to adding online training opportunities in that activity that's presented? Are we open to adding that in the activity, you know, just in case we do decide to continue funding?
I think as long as they can show that they have been successful, that's not an issue. But if they're not successful.
Okay, so we will be willing to entertain that adding that recommendation once they're able to produce data that can show us outcomes. Okay, great. Okay, and Stephen concurs. Okay, great. All right, y'all. Objective 4.3, stakeholders will have increased opportunities to provide authentic input that will impact decisions on policies affecting students with disabilities. Activity 4.3.1, advocate for increased meaningful opportunities for stakeholder input, improve practices to facilitate stakeholder input and consideration of stakeholder recommendations. The recommendation is to keep the activity. Any comments or objections to that? Okay. All right, we're going to move to goal 5. Individuals with developmental disabilities, including those with the most substantial employment support needs, will have access to quality individualized services and funding that support competitive, integrated, individualized employment and career and financial goals. Objective 5.1, an increased number of individuals with developmental disabilities will have access to qualified providers who offer a stable workforce of supported employment professionals with recognized skills sets demonstrated to be effective in supporting people with disabilities getting and maintaining employment. Activity 5.1.1, advocate for certification of employment support professionals, ESPs. Recommended language is to advocate for employment support professionals to complete high quality professional development or the improvement of service provision and employment outcomes. Any comments or objections to that recommended language? Any questions about that? Okay, so we will recommend that that language reflects what's presented. Okay. Activity 5.1.2, advocate for the implementation of a system of accountability to include outcomes-based monitoring and a complaint process relative to services for people with disabilities. The recommendation is to remove that activity. Any questions or objectives to that? Activity 5.1.3, provide funding to build the capacity of employment providers and customize employment through a competency-based certification program. The cost was $50,000. The recommendation is to offer online training opportunities related to customized employment if could lead to certification. Any objections or comments made to customized employment training opportunities? Okay, recommendation accepted. Objective 5.2, an increased number of individuals with developmental disabilities will have information and access to an integrated workforce development system that is fully funded. That's a targeted disparity for 17 to 21. Activity 5.2.1, advocate for employment providers to have access to financial incentives to support unserved and underserved populations, including people with the most substantial employment support needs and competitive integrated individualized employment. The recommendation is to keep activity 5.2.1. Any objections or comments?
Ms. Kim Bazile has her hand raised.
Ms. Kim?
I'm sorry, I just don't understand 5.2. What does targeted disparity for 2017 to 2021 mean?
The council was required to identify an area to address targeted disparities, and and this is back 5 years ago, I believe. 5 years ago or 4 years ago. Y'all chose employment in underserved areas, and so that's what that.
So that's on the existing plan that was written in 2017 as a targeted disparity, right, Sean? And we just gotta continue that because we chose that, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay.
I think I did. Okay. Objective 5.3, individuals with developmental disabilities, their families and professionals in the various service systems will have increased expectations that people with developmental disabilities can have successful, competitive, integrated, individualized employment. Activity 5.3.1, share the benefits planning services to a variety of agencies and stakeholders. The recommendation is to keep that activity. Any comments or objections? Activity 5.3.2, share Developmental Disabilities Council employment videos featuring individuals with developmental disabilities on their jobs. Recommendation, remove or combine with activity 1.4.2. Any comments or objections to this recommendation? So I definitely would like to keep this activity, but if it can go on to 1.4.2, my recommendation is just not to remove that,
That's fine. I mean, that's consistent with your previous decision.
Absolutely. Awesome. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Activity 5.3.2, provide financial support to conduct seminars with Chamber of Commerce throughout the state on the benefits of hiring people with developmental disabilities. Approximate cost $32,000. Objective 5.4, individuals with developmental disabilities will benefit from changes consistent with council positions in policy and practice in employment agencies and programs. Activity 5.4.1, advocate for systems change based on emergent employment issues. Okay, so that concludes the action plan, but we need to go back and revisit some.
One thing, this one in green, 5.3.2 was discussed yesterday. So those of you who were not here yesterday, there was a concept proposal related to this, and it was generally agreed to do that. That was not discussed this morning. So I'm going to switch my screen now to the budget, where y'all can see where you stand. And wait, I'm probably gonna mess it up. So I'm gonna move it to my other screen. Yeah, just give me a minute. I'm sorry. Can y'all see? It's small, but I'll blow it up. How y'all see what I see?
Yes.
Okay. So this is, I indicated yesterday you have about $750,000 to spend, right? Well, that's the $507,517 for of all your state general funds or directed to friends and families. That's in the plan. And it's consistent every year. So we have $750,000. I've been keeping up with the amounts as y'all have been going through the plan. I'm just gonna make it smaller for just a minute. Navigate it. The short of it is, you have no money for the child care early steps. That was a $90,000. So with that not being funded at all and all the other amounts that y'all have given, y'all have a balance of $39,500. It's a short answer. So there were a number of activities where y'all had indicated, if y'all put more money in, y'all would have more opportunities to do stuff. If there's data on the early steps childcare training, y'all would have to refigure this. I want to tell y'all this happens every year, so don't think this is odd. What y'all should do is, my recommendation is indicate where you want this extra, I'll call it $40,000 or $39,500. Where do you want that money to go? Pick the big ones that y'all were thinking y'all might want more money in. If the child care early steps pans out, well, actually there's a number of things with all of these. All of the figures that y'all were basing it on were based on last year's with a lot of travel involved. We're going to get better estimates on the cost of every single activity. So even the customized employment training, we were paying travel costs of the trainers. We're not going to have that expense anymore, for example. And so we will calculate and we'll give y'all another estimate. But what I recommend y'all do right now is indicate where you want $40,000 more of activities of the initiatives that y'all selected. And I'll back it. I'll go up a little bit, but y'all have already indicated partners, LACAN, events. So if y'all are good with those, then go to the new ones and I'm sorry. And figure out if y'all want to add money to any of those.
Well, I really don't, I'm trying to jump in. I don't want to just defund a program that's as important as early steps, because early intervention is very, very important. So I really would not want to just defund that program. But I do really want them to be able to produce the data and to show us the good work that they're doing.
Well, there are two things, Dr. McGee. First thing is their training and technical assistance requires on-site support.
Yeah.
And so the $9,000 figure was based, you've not spent $9,000 on that project this year.
Right.
And so I think it's fair, the unknown of when things are going to open up exactly and people are going to be comfortable running around as much as they did. it would not be 9,000. And that's what I'm trying to say is a lot of these other things we're going to get better estimates for you, but it will impact all these numbers, and we're going to come back with some numbers for y'all at the council meeting to consider as well. Okay. But in terms of just priorities, and if the data, they don't produce the data that indicate the effectiveness, I would suggest y'all go in with where your priorities are, where this committee's priorities lie. And that's based on, that's reflected in a dollar figure.
Well, I know that I've heard committee members and also council members speak passionately about self-advocacy for transitional age and youth, and putting towards dollars towards our future. I think it's important, the future generation. And so committee, would you be open to adding a few more dollars to the youth advocates and the self-advocates in that transitional age? We talked about that. Would the committee be open to adding some money, to a little bit more money to fund that initiative?
Absolutely.
Any thoughts on that, committee?
I'm all for it.
Okay, and so now we just have to look at a dollar amount to assign some of that 39.5 to the that group. So do we want to say maybe another 10,000 to further their efforts? I'm just throwing a number out there. I just, you know.
Let's start with that and see what we come. Let's start with that and see what we can come back with.
Sean, is there somewhere you can add a 10,000 to the youth self-advocates in transitional age?
Yes, ma'am, I added it to the events, which was where y'all had put that activity. You remember y'all merged that activity into events. And so I put it into 1.2.4 right here. I added it right here. Okay.
Great. All right, so committee, any other recommendations for the 29.5 based on what we discussed earlier?
I think in regards to the training for emergency preparedness, that $10,000 is really low. If you think of the scope, and I probably didn't share this before, but if you think about the scope of training the families and self-advocates, as well as the parish Office of Emergency Preparedness people, there's a big scope of people that are involved. The case managers who for organizations. There's a pretty large audience that you need to get trained in order if you really want to effectively address the needs of people with developmental disabilities in emergency response and preparedness. So I would think with that scope, like $20,000 would be more appropriate.
So if there's an objection, we want to add an additional $10,000 to the training and emergency preparedness response.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And I apologize, I didn't realize I didn't have my camera on.
It's all right. We have 19.5 left, folks, that we need to question Sean about the Post-Secondary Inclusive Education Alliance. Any data from them?
No, this was their first year. I mean, they were on track with doing everything. They've actually continued some activities, but you know,
I understand with COVID, it's very, you know, you can't really put in a whole lot, right?
But they were on track with, you know, with what they were expected to do when COVID hit, and then they have been continuing to the degree they could remotely, and I mean, they have their own complications with, and I don't know how much, and that's what I'm saying, like how much of their budget was travel that might get impacted. It certainly did this year, and how long that would continue.
Okay, well, I did hear the from public comment and as well as other committee members, they were passionate about supported decision-making training. Can we add another $10,000 to make it a solid $50,000 for supported decision-making training?
Yeah, so I also want to remind y'all, we had the proposals on person-centered training.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. All right.
They had, they did send them to me, but they sent, the request was to send them to Courtney, and they just used, they mistyped her name. And so those are some other trainings opportunities that y'all can consider.
Mr. Stephen Wynn has his hand raised.
Stephen, is that, you said Stephen had his hand raised? I'm sorry. Courtney, you said Stephen?
Yes, ma'am, Stephen Wynn.
Oh, okay, thank you. Stephen?
How much are we at now?
For supported decision, oh, how much we have left? Guess
Yeah.
what? We have $9,500 left, Stephen.
Can we put that towards 2.7.3 maybe?
The police
Bump it up.
tactics.
Yeah.
Well, I am willing to put, because I was on the fence with that, and let's entertain conversation. That sexual abuse and exploitation training, I heard a lot of passion around that too as well. And I'm open to, if we want to have some discussion about, because that whole part about training self-advocates so that they can train and so they can be employed just really was like, whoa, that was the big one. And getting that information out to the parents and letting them, that was huge. And so I want to be able to agree with you on that, but then also leave a little money for that sexual abuse and exploitation training, if that's okay with the committee.
So
I'll agree to that. That's fine.
Okay.
I like that.
How much?
This is Chris. Is
Chris?
any opportunity where we could have a catch-all provided so much uncertainty related to COVID, which we could have an activity that just says, you know, X amount of funds dedicated to addressing COVID-related issues? I mean, I don't know what that would address, and it just, for me, we have an activity like that we've implemented just because we have no idea what's going to happen in the next year related to COVID, and when we might need money. And we didn't want to be put into position in which we had already allocated all our funds elsewhere, so that if an unforeseen COVID related issue came up, we wouldn't have any money to address it.
Got it. Good question. Sean, what's your thoughts, committee, on that? Thanks, Chris.
I guess, I mean, I understand it, because I do feel like we were, you know, caught off guard, flat-footed this time with, you know, when it hit, we were like, some other councils were doing things and we're like, well, how, you know, we have to get the council to meet to make, to say that that's how those funds, if they y'all want to do anything specific to that. Like some of y'all have 3 activities here that are COVID related. The downfall of that would be tying up money that then would go underutilized. And with the uncertainty, I mean, the problem we're having right now is people struggle to like adjust quickly all their, you know, like how do you operate now that you can't see each other? And even like our customized training, I mean, there's a condition in that. I think we can give people the training, but to be certified, they have to get people on jobs, and there might be some problems with doing that part of it. And so, I mean, I'm just using one, but every activity we have has this degrees of uncertainty. I feel like this year we will likely come back to y'all, you know, once these proposals come through. You know, and the other recommendation, Hyacinth, that I'd like for this committee to consider before it finishes this plan is relative to the timeline.
Okay.
Typically, this committee meets in March and presents this plan in April to the council, and the council has time to vote up or down on what y'all say then. And then when it comes back in July and we have another quarter of information collected, and the council again makes adjustments. And we do not have time to do that because this plan begins on October 1st. So when the council meets in July, they're going to approve and make changes. You know, y'all can as well, you know, say more information will lead y'all to moving things around or maybe wording things differently. But then we need a 45-day public comment period. And then we don't want to wait till the October meeting because that's to ratify it, to finalize it. So the recommendation is that this committee put a recommendation, a motion for the full council to give authority to the executive committee. And so the executive committee would meet in late August and ratify the plan. It will be a public meeting, so all the council members can participate, anybody can participate, but just so that there's a plan voted on so that we can execute contracts to make all this happen. Now, with that said, is with all this uncertainty, I think, I won't want to say a standing item, but perhaps throughout this coming year at different council meetings, have the plan, consideration for changes to the plan on the council's agenda to make any adjustments as necessary. And usually that goes through committee. So a committee will look and say, if something's going on, they're going to recommend making a change. Depending on the degree of them, it may be better to have, do it all in mass and instead of doing it piecemeal. But I think the changes are going to be made. But two things: one, y'all need to make a recommendation if y'all want these projects to start on October 1st as best as possible for the executive committee. That's my suggestion. I mean, y'all can figure out a different route to get there. To have
Sean, I'm sorry, Sean, two things, but was Chris's question answered though? Like, so I think we're still trying to determine, can we have a set aside funding? And I don't know, maybe the funding has to be specifically earmarked, but I think what Chris is asking, can we have some funding?
You can. I would caution against it. I would, because if it doesn't have the specificity of what it's for, it's still, and it depends how you word it. And so, Chris, you come up with language, to do that, you can make that recommendation. I mean, it would just have to have some clarity in terms of what could it be used for, because.
And would it go in our activity plan?
It would have
Can
to.
we go and put, like, Chris, so your proposal may be something we could do. Can you formulate an objective objective or an activity that can go into one of those objectives so that we can have that cushion that you're recommending? I would have to pull up because we could have a cushion there. And I understand because people were scrambling months ago. We were just really scrambling.
And it may be repetitive because we could probably, whatever I would imagine we would likely use those dollars for, we could probably use the same dollars that are within the emergency preparedness activities that we put together. Looks like Bambi's got her hand up.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Miss Bambi Palazzola has her hand raised. Also, Miss Kelly Monroe has a comment in the chat box. What about the person-centered planning? I think that is still very much needed.
Okay.
Yes. Bambi, you want to speak? And then we'll address Miss Kelly's, and we apologize for Kelly being there that long. We will respond to her. Bambi?
In regards to that, putting money aside for, to address these emergency type things or COVID, do we have to actually put the money aside or because I could see what Sean is saying, we have money left over in our budget because we weren't able to do some of the things that because of this emergency. So could there be an item with no money attached that allows us to do that work, and then we could shift money to it if the need arises? Is that an option? I guess that's a question.
It would require a vote. If y'all could dedicate funds, you know, over $5,000 requires a council vote.
So Chris, Bambi, what if we, and we gotta address Ms. Kelly, what if we don't make it more than 5,000? You know, I know, I'm just thinking, I mean, I just remember how people were just scrambling so bad 45 days ago. And we didn't even, I know we didn't see it coming. What's your thoughts about that? Like, if we put 2,500, you know, not have the 5,000, and it's just something to leap from. And then if we need to move dollars later, then we would ask for, you know, to do so. What you thinking? I see the rock eyebrow raising on Bambi right now. You know, that rock eyebrow. Y'all know what I'm talking about. I see that on her. So, but what y'all thinking about that? Like,
The chairperson has approval to make adjustments of up to $5,000.
but my chairperson is in Honolulu, Sean, and I'm filling in for my chairperson right now. So that means that's gonna fall on me.
Right. Yeah. I'm just giving you information. So
right.
So
I think that what you're saying though, Hyacinth, I think that's my puzzled eyebrows raising, is that by putting 2,500, it doesn't address, because if we really need to address something and we need to add more money to it, what Sean is saying, if we put anything more than $5,000 towards it, we still have to have a vote. And we could do that if we don't put anything in the budget right now. Like we could have at any time come and said, hey, Sean, look at our contracts. How much money do we have that you see is not going to be fulfilled? Can we put $20,000 to something, and or whatever the dollar amount? I think I'm saying that right, Sean. Can you say yeah?
You're correct.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's it. And it depends on, anyway, that's correct. I'll leave it.
All right, committee, we got to make a decision. I love y'all, but we have two things on the table right now, and I'm leaning towards the cushion, Bambi. I am. I'm leaning. I'm just telling you I'm leaning. I'm just leaning there. I'm leaning to the cushion.
Good with a cushion.
Kim leaned over to the cushion. Do I have any other people that? But Chris, if we do that, we're gonna have to like have it included in the action plan somewhere, because I understand what Bambi is saying. You know, you can always revisit this and move money at another time. So if we're not prepared to do that, then I'm comfortable with revisiting it at another time and then going to the council for approval with a more than 5,000, because my chair is not, you know what I mean? So if we're not prepared to move on an activity now that we can put it, then I am going to go with we're gonna, bring it before the council for approval if we need to shift funds.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Brenda Casse has her hand raised.
Ms. Brenda.
Oh, I was just agreeing with going with the cushion.
Ms. Brenda agrees with the cushion. Okay. Anybody else want to make a comment before I move? Before I make a decision?
I just have a question. Are we gonna go address Miss Monroe's comment?
Yes, we will, but we have to act on this now. And then I promise we will address Miss Kelly Monroe. Okay, so it sounds like the majority of us is going with the cushion. Sean, I'm going to go ahead and ask that we allow for some funding. The amount of $2,500 was offered I would like to go on ahead and propose that we have a cushion of $2,500. We can possibly item it COVID-19, but I'm also going to ask Chris to develop an activity to go under the objective for that. And I have to pull up, sorry, you know, and at some point look at and see what objective that will fall under. All right, Miss Kelly Monroe, thank you for your patience. Her question was about person-centered planning, and I know Sean mentioned that earlier about our person-centered proposal, he said, or information came in. Didn't you mention it? I thought you addressed something like that a moment ago.
I'm going to share a new document. And I mean, we have two different documents. I think this is probably the easiest one. And I'll ask if you would invite Laura Bracken, if she's willing to share. They presented a number of different activities, all related to building capacity and person-centered practices. And so, and it really just literally got lost in the mail. So everybody, it's really at kind of the core of what the council's purpose is to have person-centered practices. So it's perfectly aligned with what we are trying to make happen. And it's definitely, I think it's definitely needed. And they have a number of different concepts to consider, of different trainings and different amounts. But if y'all had money that y'all were wondering what to do, having training on person-centered training practices would be aligned with the council's role.
Sean, can you make the font just a little larger on this?
Yes, ma'am.
So
this is just the first page. They have another one with another project. So I'll leave this one up for a minute, and then I'll
so this is a proposal to add person-centered into our budget for 21?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Someone had their comment.
Sean, this is Laura Bracken. You unmuted me, so I figured you may want me to give a little bit of an overview. So with the work that we've been doing in other states, we were seeing some innovative things that were being done. And so when the DD Council was soliciting for concepts and ideas, what we started doing is pulling some of the information that we were seeing that other states were using in order to try and create systems change. And when we look back at the goals of the DD Council, several of the DD Council's goals focus on quality, individualized services, things that address an individual's unique skills, interests, and goals. And so even though we have in our state and many states a person-centered plan, at the end of the day, if it's not what the person wants or the person needs, it's not really person-centered. And so some states are struggling with the same thing and have started to implement some strategies or projects to try and shift the focus to truly build that person-centered system where the entire system operates to empower individuals and families, and the entire system focuses on individual services that focus on unique skills, interests, goals. And so in some ways, if you think about self-directed services where the power is with the individual, this is a situation where you're changing how the entire state works with and the relationship with individuals and families for all the services, not just like self-directed services. And so we pulled together 5 of the projects that we're seeing that are being used in other states, or 5 of them, that and each project can stand alone and result in positive outcomes on their own, but we put them in a chart to show how collectively they work together to create that systems change, and they work together to change the system to a person-centered system. The first one is a leadership summit. What that does is it pulls together all the key players to the same table, to a 2-day meeting to develop a plan that identifies the pieces that are interfering with individuals and families truly being at the center of services. Then there's the person-centered thinking training, which is a certified curriculum through the learning community on person-centered practices. And then another option is coaches and leaders training. And that's where you build person-centered thinking leaders that function as coaches. And those leaders are embedded in various aspects of the service system. And they look at those day-to-day processes that interfere with
individuals and families achieving what they want or getting what they need, and changing all those little barriers that get in the way so that you can convert the system. And then charting the life course is another training that is absolutely phenomenal, because it can work toward empowering families who aren't even connected to the service system. It was training that's developed by families. It's out of the University Center for Excellence in Missouri, Kansas City. There's tools that that are user-friendly tools that really families can use starting at a very young age. And so it's before they even connect with the service system, which is what's so good about it. And then the other thing that we saw that was really neat was Ambassadors for Respect, which is an anti-bullying program. And what that does is it builds individuals with a disability as leaders who function as ambassadors in the classroom setting to help elementary students learn about the importance of accepting and including others. And so all of these together, like I said, they're all standalone, but together they are all working on empowering individuals, empowering families, and shifting the service system to one that functions in a person-centered way.
Miss Bambi Palazzola has her hand raised.
Miss Bambi.
Hi, can you go back up to the top? My questions were about one of the first three options. No, but back to the top. Let's see. So the first one you say, so both of these first two are 2-day trainings, and I think it must be the third one. I don't think it said how many. I think that was my question in that third option regarding coaches and leaders training. Right. You say provider agencies and OCDD, and you gave a dollar amount, but what's the number of people that would be trained for that dollar amount?
So this is a training it isn't done by Bracken Associates. We're presenting the information though, because we thought it would be great information for y'all to see what other states are doing. And so we did contact an agency to get a quote on that. And that was the quote that they gave us. Again, we were just pulling the information together for you. I'd have to check back with them to find out what those costs would be or how many people. But I know that it's intended to have those coaches and leaders embedded at various parts of the system. So you'd want people embedded at the regional system level. You'd want people embedded in the support coordination system. You want people embedded in provider agencies, so that they're all working on a day-to-day basis to change those little things that get in the way with providing quality services to individuals and helping to build capacity. So it's kind of like in some ways it's a train the trainer model, but it's having those people designated as coaches and leaders and that constant consultation to help build that capacity. But I can check with them and see if there's a limit on the number of people. But again, this isn't about us. This is about, these are some great things that are happening in other states, and you know, we wanted you to see.
So can you go back up to the first two? Is the first two are ones that you do, Laura, through your organization?
No, they're not. The second one, person-centered thinking training, we do have somebody that's certified in person-centered thinking training. So could we provide a one-day person-centered thinking training? Yes, we could. But I would strongly encourage the council. It's not about just a one-day training. I mean, so many times trainings are done, but you don't see you don't see any positive change from it. Somebody may have increased their knowledge base, but what you want to get to is true systems change. And so, do I have somebody that can provide that one-day training? Yes, I do. The important thing is looking at the leadership summit and getting people that are all working in the same direction, that all recognize that we want a person-centered system, but there's barriers that happen at all the different levels. They happen at case management, they happen at the regional office, they happen at the provider agency, they happen at all those different levels. And so it's really getting all the people that are involved in that system to come up with that unified plan to say, this is the system that we want for individuals and families. This is what individuals and families want. And with that is, and I didn't list individuals and families, but DD Council and advocacy organizations, the individuals and families leaders need to be at that table. And I listed the agencies there, but it's changing the system, and just doing a random training it's not going to accomplish what you want to accomplish.
And so this is my last question. So if like I look at the first one, the Leadership Summit, if you did something like that, is that something that is needed that hasn't been done before in this manner? And is it something that's needed? Like I can't really decipher that from just this description.
Well, there's been, to my knowledge, there has not been a conversation that had the advocacy organizations, the support coordination entities, the provider entities, the state office and the regional offices in the room at the same time, and the leadership of those to say, we need to all work together to create a better system. And what I'm saying is in the room at the same time, that the leadership of those to come up with a unified plan that they all agree on. I don't know that that's been done. If it has been done, I don't know where that plan is, and I don't know that it's being worked on. And it certainly isn't, if it is being worked on, it certainly isn't equating to better outcomes for people. But I could be wrong, but please educate me if I am.
No, I'm not aware of it either. That's why I asked. I hear discussion of it, but I don't know of what you described.
What's so powerful about that leadership summit is that right now, lots of times there'll be meetings that are held, but it'll be, this entity's holding the meeting, or maybe the regional office does something, or maybe the case managers get together and do something, or the providers get together and do something, or the state gets together and might pull in, and different people might be pulling together others into the room. But what this leadership summit does is it brings those leaders together and they commit to working on that shared vision for that person-centered system. And if you don't get the commitment from them, then you don't have people working at those various levels to change the problems that exist at those levels. And so it's that unified plan for what that person-centered system, unified plan to empower individuals and families by shifting to that person-centered system and identifying, the barriers and committing to working on those, because you're not going to identify every barrier in 1 2-day meeting. But it's the commitment to work on those barriers from that point forward within the power that they have within their respective areas, like, within the regional office areas or district authority areas, or within the case management area. And it's getting that commitment that everybody's going to be working on this.
Okay, thank you. Does any other committee members have, thank you, Ms. Laura, for your presentation. Any other committee members have any questions about what's in front of us before I make a quick comment or statement about it?
Yes, Ms. Brenda Casse has her hand raised.
Ms. Brenda?
Yes, Ms. Bracken mentioned that they're all standalone projects. And I like the person-centered thinking, as well as it being tailored to help individuals and their families. And then the one chartering the life course, where's that one?
It's on the second page. Sean, if you could scroll it, if you can, scroll it to that area. Go down a little bit more. There was another one.
Yes, and this one, because
There it is.
I believe Ms. Bracken said it was not just for waiver recipients. Is that correct?
That is correct. And it's all ages. It could be from the time a parent first learns that their child has a disability, to even families that have been in the system for a while, and first identifies that their child has a disability and they're not connected to the service system, all the way to people that have been in the system and are aging or elderly.
So that's the lifespan.
The chart in the life course.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. I would like to make a comment about this. I am more interested in putting the dollars to my parents, my self-advocates, and my families before any state agencies. The first one, Leadership Summit, sounds very appealing, but I think that should be something that should come from OCDD or a state agency to help promote a leadership summit throughout the state. That's just my personal opinion. I would much rather take the money and put it towards a program that would support the self-advocates, the families, and the parents. And so I'm willing to entertain any discussion on that. Particularly the Ambassadors for Respect program has the anti-bullying program for self-advocates and trainers. I know I'm looking at the dollar amount, folks, but I'm not sure that may be something that Lillian's group may want to look into. It says elementary students, but maybe adolescent, high school students, they may have a program. I don't know, Miss Laura, if they said that there was something for high schoolers too, but I could see the Ambassadors for Respect program possibly going with the group for the youth advocates. And so, of course, Charting a Life course is appealing, but I think that the one with the Leadership Summit, I just caution us as a DD Council spearheading that, as I think that should come from OCDD, or I really think if they spearheaded that Leadership Summit to pull people together, I think that's where it should come from and not from the DD Council's budget. But that's just my personal take on it. We do have a few dollars left. Once Chris, 2,500 has been removed, I think we're down to $7,500 left. So we have to, and thank you, Ms. Laura, for your presentation. And we can continue to have some conversation about where we want to go with that, because it is something that we can consider. We do have to move back to now, I think we have 7,000 left once we have 2,500 set aside for COVID relief or COVID-19 relief. We have 7,000 left. So I don't know if we can do something with Ms. Laura's recommendation for 7,000. But we have to put that somewhere. And maybe that's something, you know, we need to finalize the $7,000 where it's supposed to be. Any recommendations?
So this is Chris. At the risk of going off into another discussion, I'll just throw this out there. And I will preface it with, we do a lot of work and we have federal funds to do this. So I don't know that it would be good to use DD Council dollars. And the fact that these dollars only hit October 1, but people with developmental disabilities are some of the most disenfranchised individuals with respect to their right to vote. And voter accessibility is a huge, huge issue. I don't know if you wanted to throw some dollars at supporting materials that promote voter education among people with developmental disabilities, but it's a really important fundamental issue, voting, the right to vote, access to polling places. And it might even be that much more important this year because, again, COVID related, I don't know what voting is going to look like this year. So there might be misinformation, misunderstandings about things, exacerbating just general misunderstanding of how people with disabilities being able to vote.
Would that be under 1.4.3, y'all? Am I looking at this too hard? Because it's been, you know, would that be something, what Chris is speaking, would that fit under 1.4.3, or what are y'all thinking? He does bring a valid point. We don't know what voting is going to look like, and folks needing support with that is crucial. I'm trying to get y'all to lunch.
I think it should be its own separate.
Separate, okay.
Yeah.
And so it looks like we have access to voting that's been included. That's very specific, Sean, but it may be other things too, but I know we can play with the
Put a
language.
placeholder, Hyacinth. I'll work with some language because we will have to add an activity.
Yeah, for
Um,
both of those,
But-
yes.
but just knowing, I mean, me putting it in here indicates we will craft some language
Mm-hmm.
that y'all would have to approve later. So are y'all good with these dollar figures?
Yes, folks, are we good with this? It looks like we were able to pull this together without pulling each other's hair out, I guess.
I have, and my screen's gonna go off. I'm gonna have to pop it back again, probably. It did. Give me 1 second, please. Based on y'all conversation, y'all have 3 motions that y'all recommended. I mean, this is my summary basically, but it's y'all had indicated y'all wanted to require proposals, indicate how outreach to diverse communities would be conducted, and insurance participation will include diversity relative to race. Might not have that word exactly right. I can tweak it. The second motion is the big one for y'all to recommend the council consider adopting the FY plan as presented. And then the third one is what I talked about with granting the executive committee for the council to grant authority to the executive committee to just move on the plan until y'all get to the October meeting, basically. So Hyacinth, that's just for your.
Can we go ahead and move on the motion 2 and 3 and then change the wording of motion 1? We'll add some wording.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just trying to remind y'all that's what y'all intent was. Yes, ma'am.
So perfect. Does someone want to make that motion for motion 2?
I'll make a motion to recommend the council consider adopting FY21 plan as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Any
Who
objections?
seconded it? I heard multiples.
Oh.
Hyacinth, who you
Who
called?
seconded it? Who seconded it?
I second it, Bambi.
Bambi, okay. Any objections? Abstentions? Motion carried. All right, who wants to make the second motion? Can I get someone to motion the second
I can make
to recommend the council to
Second.
grant? Mhm. Okay, Chris seconded. I don't know who motioned it. I didn't hear it.
So Chris's hand.
Chris?
Yeah, I think I motioned it.
Okay, Chris motioned it. Who
I can
second?
second.
Steven second. Any objections? Abstentions? Motion carried. All right, so that third one, when you put it back up, John.
And yes, ma'am.
I want to propose and to amend the language to reflect, include diversity relative to race, ethnicity. I think you should put, y'all tell me if I'm wrong, I think you should put sexual orientation. I think that needs to be included in there.
Gender.
Yes, gender.
Yes.
So the language that we've been using in some of these types of things is something along the line of to require proposals to indicate how outreach to diverse communities will be conducted. Transportation will include. We've started using like all marginalized communities.
Oh, yes, that's perfect, Chris.
Kind of wraps
Yes.
it all up, yeah.
All marginalized. Perfect. So if you want to specifically say the race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender, and all marginalized communities.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
and
think-
all other marginalized communities, I think is great.
Mhm.
So that all other marginalized communities, Sean's gonna go after the gender.
Great.
That's perfect.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, that's perfect. Brenda motion, who seconded?
I'll second it.
That's Bambi. All right, any objections? Any abstentions? Motion carried. Okay, folks, I don't think we have anything else on the agenda. Sean, do we have anything else?
Y'all did
I
great.
don't,
Y'all
I
did good.
don't suspect, I'm sorry?
I said y'all did good. No, that was all. Y'all got a plan. You know, y'all got, I think, everything y'all wanted to go to the council. Y'all just need to know this is the first of many steps. We're gonna bring back more information as y'all can, and you know, it's not set in stone. So at the July meeting, y'all can move stuff around, and y'all should. Okay.
Okay. All right, well, with that, I want to just say, today I had the spirit of April with me, conducting this meeting, and she was phenomenal with conducting these meetings, and I had her spirit with me today, and I'm grateful for that. And with that, can I get a motion to adjourn this meeting today?
Motion to adjourn.
Hyacinth, I'm sorry, this is Ebony.
Yes, Ebony.
There was a public comment on YouTube.
Okay.
I just want to make sure we're addressing all the comments.
Oh, we have to, Ebony. So
Yes.
folks, we're gonna have to pause that adjourn. What's the
Sorry.
comment? That's
It's
okay.
from Crystal White. She's asking, would using the funds for voting be considered supplanting?
I don't.
Well, oh, go ahead, Sean. You can
I
address
mean,
it.
I would have to look and see if there's any state funds supporting that, but I don't think so. But I'll check. I'll make sure, like, I'll check. That's a good question. I'll check before y'all vote on it in July.
Yeah, so yes, we'll take a look at that, Crystal, and get guidance on it. I think what we're trying to do is ensure that our families and self-advocates get to, get the information that they need so that they can be, can vote. So, with that in mind, I don't think we're taking any political positions or standings. So we'll look into that. Thanks for the question, Crystal. And so with that, motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, second.
I'll second.
All right, meeting adjourned. See you guys really soon. Have a good one. Okie dokie. Alrighty, bye-bye.
Thank you, Hyacinth. You really did great.
Thank you. Thank you. See y'all soon.